Welcome to the 2022 Lake Wateree Association annual meeting. The recent former chairman of this great association, and I appreciate the opportunity that Jim has allowed me to be able to go ahead and make the welcoming remarks. And whether you're attending here in person or virtually, we're glad to have you here. I got to tell you, I am overwhelmed at the number of people that are here in person. This has far exceeded our expectations of what we thought we were going to have. And I don't know what the virtual count is, but my heart feels good. I would like to let everybody know here right now that this meeting, the annual meeting, will be taped, and it will be available on our website. And of course, we have people with us on the Zoom link. You know, I became the chairman 2 years ago. 2020, we were going to be right here. Right here. COVID got a vote. So we have had to adjust and change. 2021, we said, okay, we'll have the LWA meeting, we're going to have it right here. Again, we had to go to a Zoom option because of our health concerns for everybody who was in the organization. Zoom meeting went really, really well. A lot of y'all were online or you viewed it afterwards. But now today, we're here again. And it's wonderful to see all of your faces and to have you in attendance and for us to be able to provide that option for our members. We're very happy. So when I said good morning, what I really mean is this is a great morning for y'all to be here with us today. Hey, we have an outstanding agenda set for today. We have Lynn Dunn, Tammy Steyer, and the Duke Energy team that are going to be here to talk about the dam modification that's going to go on some of the projects and the other things of interest, of course, on the lake. We have our UofSC family that's with us. Dr. Scott, Dr. Ferry, Dr. Ann Borbe. Thank you. They're here and they're going to talk about the water quality and water issues that we have with us. At this time, what I would like to do is I would like to recognize our lifetime members. So if you're a lifetime member, if you would raise your hand or stand, I would appreciate that. I can't tell you how much y'all mean to our association. You know, your long-term commitment is outstanding. I would like to go ahead now, and I would like to recognize our public officials, elected officials that are here. Senator Henry Stopson.
Oh, that was good.
Thank you. Chairman Julian Burns, Chairman of Kershaw County Council, will join us a little bit later. He stopped by already this morning, but they're doing a big cleanup here in Kershaw County, and he wanted to go ahead and get that started. I would say this: we appreciate both y'all. This is not an unusual thing for us to have interaction with them. You have been coming to us for years now, and the same way with Chairman Burns. So we consider you part of us, and we're so glad that you took time out to join us. Is there any other elected officials, community leaders that Miss Shirley?
Yeah, Miss Shirley.
Yeah.
Hey, Shirley.
You're so much part of the family that, you know, I didn't even have that portion of it. You're always a distinguished member, but we're always glad to have you as part of our team. Thank you, Mr. Shirley. Anyone else? Okay, we may have some online. If they do, I'll ask them to chime in and let us know. At this time, I would like for our former past chairman, Mr. Bill Stroud, to come up and lead the invitation.
I was thinking that some
son told me the former chairman, or the former chairman, or something like that. And I appreciate that deal. At least you can see the old chair. Let's pray. Father, we meet here together as those who share together in a concern for Lake Wateree, for what it means in terms of recreation, of a lot of fun, but also what it means in terms of the water supply that it supplies to this area. We ask that as we work together on this, that we would just enjoy it. Lord, we're here, yes, this is a business meeting, but we're here in many ways to have fun. And we're glad that you appreciate us having fun. And so we appreciate you today for all you've done for us, for this time together. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, just a couple of quick administrative things. You notice we got doors here, bathrooms located right outside in the hallway. And then of course, I hope most of y'all have found the food, the coffee, and the drinks. And there's a couple of bathrooms that are located in there. Maggie Carson. Maggie has a table, or you're gonna have a table set up that you will be able to come sign up to be interviewed for about water quality. We're not going to do the interview here, but she will set up a time to come visit with you so that she can talk about that. Is that's the plug you needed, right?
Yeah, and I'll talk about it a little bit later when I talk about it. But that was perfect. Thank you. So please come over if you're interested.
All right. The other thing is we have, I think Mike Thomas told me we have 44 dozen T-shirts that over the years we have accumulated, and we would love for you to take some home with you. They said that it is far exceeding our storage capacity, and we're ready for some updated T-shirts, but we must get these need to go as they are. So take one, take two.
Hold your hands up, I'll bring them to you.
Oh, she said if you hold your hand up, she'll bring them to you. All right, with that being said, now's my favorite part. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce you to the new chairman of the Lake Wateree Association, Mr. Jim Latruglio. Now, Jim has been an area representative for us. He's been our first vice chair, and I'm very excited for what he's going to bring to this organization and the leadership for the next couple of years. It's going to be an exciting time. It's an exciting time that we're going to be able to get back together and fellowship and do things. So we're looking forward to that. Jim, I turn this over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Dale suggested earlier, it's a pleasure to see everybody here. It's absolutely phenomenal to actually get through some of these issues around the pandemic and come back together as a community, and hopefully the lake will benefit as a result. I think there was a slide so you could see some of the names. I have the pleasure now of introducing the 2020 board and area reps. So obviously I'm the chairman. Ray Garcia is our vice chair. Ray, just throw your hand up there, please. Dale Hall is our preceding chairman, so he'll be around and he'll continue to work with us and help us through these next months, getting the organization moving forward in 22. We have a brand new secretary, Ann Carrero, and Sheila Hall will remain on as the vice secretary. Sheila, over the back there, Sheila. Johnny Deal is going to remain treasurer. Johnny, thank you. And Sean Schaffner is the vice chairman. Is Sean here? Okay. And then finally on the board, we have Harriet Brown as our external affairs director. Thank you, Harriet. Okay. So one of the main reasons that we come together is to choose the area reps. And so as we sit at these tables with our neighbors and so forth, and we think about how we might want to participate in this organization moving forward, it's an opportunity for everybody to pick up a role and to help in whatever way they can, right? So there's obviously an opportunity to be an area rep, an alternate area rep, a second alternate area rep, but there's lots and lots of opportunities for people to volunteer. So we welcome that with open arms. And with that, I'm just gonna run through the list of area reps. A little later in the program, everybody will have an opportunity to vote amongst themselves as to who they would like to have represent their area. And at the end of the program, we will talk about any changes that may occur on that front. So area 1, we have Stacy Abowitz and we have Deborah Frazier as the alternate. Area 2, we actually have 2 openings. So we're looking for opportunities in area 2 for, yeah. Area 3, we have Shirley Green and Shirley, and it'd be nice if somebody were to back Shirley up as an alternate. Area 5, currently I am the area 5 rep and Andrew Williams is my alternate, but I think that there's probably some opportunity to pick up some new faces there as well. Milt Marley is the area 6 rep and Sean is his backup. But again, anybody over there that wants to participate, we're welcome. We're welcome. Area 7 is Libby Davis and Bob Davis. Area 8 is Mike Thomas, Brian Johnson, Rocky Couch, and Vicky Thomas. There we go.
Just 1 second.
Area 9, we have Nico and Garcia and Sarah Williams. Area 10, Mike Phelps and George. It says Harkins, but it's Harris, right? Harris. Harkins. My bad. Sorry. Johnny Deal is our area 11 rep. Jack and Ann Carrero are our area 13 reps, and Mary Ellen Stroop and Clyde. Mary Ellen Stroop is 14. I think I got a little typo here. I think Clyde McFadden is area rep at large, which we were calling area 15. So again, these are the people that are representing you and coming to the board meetings on a monthly basis. These will be the people that will bring your concerns and your desires for this organization to the board meeting. So again, you know, sit amongst yourselves. Hopefully we get a lot of participation. I think that was pretty much it with respect to the introductions. And then next up is actually, I think we're back on time. Next up is actually going to be
Yeah, I didn't recognize him. I'd like for you to know.
John from the Catawba River Keepers is with us, John Searby, and we do an awful lot with John, and we appreciate him coming down here and spending time with us. And he's a wealth of knowledge, so please get to know John. That being said, I think we can turn it over to Duke and start the presentation with respect to the dam modification. So this is part of the virtual meeting, so I'm going to defer to Ray and Johnny at this point.
Hi, Ray. Johnny, this is Tammy Steyer. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, can you turn your video on?
I can. And I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to see anybody if they chat. Can you all see the presentation?
Not yet. There we go. We're close.
Got it yet?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for having us this morning. And I'm going to make this full screen. I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to make this presentation full screen, and I'm not sure that I can see anything in the chat once I do that. So y'all may have to stop me if somebody has a question or something. Please feel free to stop me. Okay, so thank you for having us today. With me is Lynn Dunn. She's our compliance manager and responsible for operations. I'm going to be talking about the dam modification project that we're planning to start this year on Lake Wateree. Kelvin Reagan with Lake Services is also with us today, and he'll be giving us available to answer some questions if you have anything related to permitting during the lake construction project. So with that, I think there are other reps from Duke Energy here as well. I know Brett Hardis, who's our environmental, he's with our environmental organization. He's with us today. Also with us are Rick Duran and Tyson Blanton. Tyson is new to our organization. She's with the Government and Community Relations team, working with Rick Duran. So we're happy to have Tyson with us. Are there other folks from Duke on that need to be introduced? If so, please speak up. Okay, I'm assuming not hearing anything. Okay, here's our agenda real quick. We're going to talk about the dam modification project that I know you guys are very interested in. Partnering opportunities that will occur and can occur during this construction project. We're going to talk about Lake Wateree public access during construction, as well as lake use permitting. And as I mentioned, Kelvin's here to help us answer some questions on that. And then I'll provide you information on our Lakeview app and our lake website, so you can go to these places and get additional information. And with that, I will jump right in. Okay, as you guys know, I hope you know, FERC has required us to construct a bladder dam or some type of flow release technology that will release at least 10,000 cubic feet per second from the spillway. That's in addition to what goes through the units. So we are in the process of completing the design and doing the bid for the construction of a inflatable gate. This picture that you see in this picture here is an Obermeyer gate. It's just a steel gate it's a steel plated gate with an inflatable bladder behind it. So when you want to deflate the gate, when you want to drop the gate, you deflate the bladders and it drops. And that's what you're seeing in the one that's in the upper part of that picture. The gate is actually down, but the one in the lower part is up. So we're required to have this completed by March of 26. So we're actually a little ahead of schedule. As I mentioned, the design of the Obermeyer inflatable gate is currently underway. We'll be installing 3 sections of 4.5 foot tall gates. The bid event closed at the end of February, and we're evaluating the bids at this point, and we're expecting to award the contract in April of 22. So following that, we have to submit to our dam safety division of FERC the drawings, the construction plans and the drawings. So that will take place in April as well. We also had to apply for a non-capacity license amendment to include the installation of this gate. That's a different division at FERC, but it's a requirement of FERC as well. And so that was submitted to FERC in January of 22. And the construction start date is going to be dependent on FERC approval. Both of those divisions of FERC have to approve our plans before we can start construction. This picture you're looking at here is an artist rendering of what the inflatable gate will look like. So there'll be 3 sections, as I mentioned. It's kind of blurred out there just to make room for the text. But there'll be 3 sections of gate on top of the section of spillway closest to the dam. Construction is targeted to start September of 22. The total construction duration is estimated to take about 14 to 16 months. That's very dependent on the weather. And you know, when we have high inflow events, because they're working on the spillway, they'll have to come off the spillway and allow the water to go through. And then when we get the water back down, they'll move back out and continue construction. So the more high inflow events we have, the more that schedule could be impacted. The drawdown of the lake is going to start around November. At this point, we're saying November of 22. We chose to start in the fall of this year because there's only a single summer impact doing it this way. If we had started in the spring, we would impact 2 summers. So we chose to start in the fall to reduce the amount of the impact during the prime recreation season. The maximum drawdown will be maintained between 93 and 94 feet. That's 6 to 7 feet below full pond. And I've heard, you know, from Kelvin and Kermit that there was some confusion about the extent of the drawdown, and the drawdown is being measured from the full pond, not from the target. So there was some question, is it 6 to 7 feet below the target, or is it below the full pond? So let me clarify and make sure that you understand it's below full pond, not the target. So we're looking to operate between 93 and 94 feet during the construction. There are times, you know, I mentioned that we're in the process of evaluating the construction bids that we got, and there may be times during this 14 to 16 months when the contractor requires the lake level to come back up. So at this point, because we don't have a detailed contractor schedule, we don't really know how the lake is going to be operated, because the contractor is the one that's going to drive that. So there could be periods when at different construction phases where the lake level will be higher than 93 to 94 feet. And as I mentioned earlier, lake levels are impacted by high inflow events, that if we're around 93 or 94 feet, we have a high inflow event, that water's coming up. So it's going to fluctuate is my point there. We're expecting completion to be between the fourth quarter of 23 and the first quarter of 24. And again, impacted by high inflow events. But when we award this contract to the contractor, the first thing we'll do is develop a detailed schedule. And if there's a period, for instance, the contractor's got to go in and chip off all this concrete, 4.5, 5 feet of concrete across these 3 sections of the dam. So in doing that, the lake level will need to be low while they're doing that. But when they come back in to put the inflatable gate on, it may be that they want the lake level a little higher in order to be able to reach the top of the dam and install the gates easier. So that's the kind of detail that we'll know. So for instance, it may be low from November to March, between 93 and 94 feet. But it could be that April, May, June, July, something like that, we need it up around 95, 96, 97, something like that. So once we have the detailed schedule from the contractor, we will communicate that to you guys and make sure you all understand what the target elevation is for the duration of this construction, because it will change. So that was a lot of information. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, not hearing any. This is the lakeside view of the inflatable gate. Again, it's an artist. I'm sorry.
There actually is a question. Harriet?
Okay.
That 10,000 number had been increased a little bit. Am I wrong?
The cubic feet per second was increased, I think, because of some technical requirements that you all have. Is that correct?
We have the 4-foot gates were designed to do 10,000 CFS. So we're installing the 4.5-foot gates in order to provide a little cushion, so that we have the ability to release at least 10,000 CFS. So it may be, once we get these installed and the vendor does the flow duration curve, then it may be that it releases a little more than that. So that's the reason we went to the 4.5-foot gates as opposed to the 4-foot gates. So there is a possibility that it could be, 11,000, but at this point, we don't have that flow duration curve from the vendor. So we can't really say exactly what it will be, but it will be at least 10,000 CFS.
Excuse me, Tammy, I've also heard people ask me specifically about whether or not there's a procedure or a set of protocols as to when the gate will be deployed and how it will be deployed?
That has not been developed. Lynn Dunn in our operations group will work with our Regulated Renewable Operations Center, and they'll develop a protocol for and a process or a procedure for doing that. Lynn, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Tammy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we will have procedures and protocols that will provide guidance on how we operate the bladder dam. And depending on how much inflow we do have, we could open these early, one section or two section or all three sections, depending on how much inflow we have. And also if we have a hurricane and we need to pull the reservoir down, we can deflate all three of them so that we can draw the lake down quicker. But as far as the details on when and how and what all we're going to use to determine, what criteria we're going to use to determine, that is being worked on now and will be determined throughout this process. We will have to get the curves for the flow in order to determine how soon we'll open them, if that answers your question.
Yeah, yes, I think it does. I'm sure that there are going to be people that are going to be interested in seeing that if that's going to be public at some point. But yes, thank you for that answer.
Jim.
Yes, I have another question.
Okay.
Just speak loud.
Duke was going to build another bladder dam somewhere, I can't remember where. And
Great Falls.
Great Falls, thank you. And to use that experience to help design this dam. Is that being done and what's been learned?
Well, you're right. We are installing these actually at two different locations, at our Blewett Falls plant down on the Yadkin PD River, and also on the Great Falls Diversion Dam. So, you know, I can't really speak to what lessons have been learned because I'm not the construction project manager, and I hesitate to do that. But Patrick Bennett is our project manager for this project, in charge of the construction. So I would have to leave that up to Patrick to really answer, but I will say that, you know, every time you do something, you get better at it, right? So I know one of the issues that, Great Falls is being drawn down between 12 and 15 feet below full pond in order to install the bladder dam there. And here we have a critical reservoir elevation of 92.5, I believe, which is the Lugoff-Elgin water intake elevation that we cannot go below. So because of that, we are going to have to construct this a little differently than they're doing at Great Falls because we can't pull the lake way down. So we are going, you know, they're talking about bulkheads around the bladder dam and installing like cofferdams and things like that. Whereas at Great Falls, they didn't have to do that because they could draw the lake down farther. So every one of these is unique because they're all, you know, all just like all the hydros are different. They're all similar in some ways, but different in others. So each construction project is unique. And I would like to think we got better at it, but I really couldn't answer that question.
Tammy.
Yes.
Jim, this is Lynn. To add to that discussion, as far as performance and how the bladder dams will work, Blewett Falls construction and Great Falls construction, those are still under construction. And so we have not put those to use yet to be able to answer the question as far as performance.
Right. And operations, exactly.
Thank you, Lynn. I think we had another question.
Once construction starts, will there be a real-time website that is keeping us current on scheduled flows and levels?
Tammy, once the construction starts, will there be a website that keeps us up to date on the various events that could be potentially impactful to the community here?
We will use our Lakeview app as well as our lake information website and post special messages whenever there is an operations change in the lake, like if we expect it to come up, and we'll be there for, a week or more, or 2 weeks or 2 months, then we'll communicate that via our special messages. And I'll show you the link to our Lakeview app and our lake website and as we get on through the construction, through the presentation here. But I think most of you probably already have that, I hope.
Another question.
Another question, Jack?
Will the target level remain the same after completion?
Will the target level remain the same? What?
After the completion of the project?
Yes. Does it go up? Is this one that goes up, Lynn?
No, it during the summer target will remain 97.
Right. Okay.
Once completion, then there are targets, Lake James, Lake Norman, and Lake Wiley. Those will go up. The summer target will go up a half a foot.
Yeah, because we're able to release more here. But that was a change that was made in the comprehensive relicensing agreement back in 2018, I believe it was. It was approved by FERC. But the target for Lake Wateree remains 97. Other questions?
With the increased flows in the lake, is there any expectation that turbidity will be changed?
I couldn't hear
that. Probably, it was a question about the turbidity as it relates to the change in water levels during the construction process. And I'm not sure you all can speak to that, but perhaps the folks from UofSC, when they come up, they perhaps could speak to some of that. Do you have a comment on that?
I wouldn't expect it to be any different because, the 93 to 94 is our minimum. We have a minimum of 93 in our current license, that's our minimum, our normal minimum during the wintertime, and our normal minimum during the summer, I believe, is 94. So we're going to be operating pretty much within the minimum anyway, within the normal operating range. So I wouldn't really expect it to be any different.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes?
Did I understand you that it's 10,000 cubic feet per second per gate?
No, in total. In total. Yeah.
It's in total, right.
Will there be additional guards in front of the dam to keep boaters away?
The question is, will there be any additional guards in front of the dam to keep boaters away and
during the drawdown?
During the drawdown?
I'm not sure. That's one of the things that we'll have to discuss with the contractor when we get them on board. I'm sure and we're going to talk about this here in a second about closing Buck Hill access area because it's so close to the dam and so close to the construction. So we're going to do our best to keep the public away from it. And that's one of the things we'd like to ask you guys to help us with, is to educate people to stay away from construction, right? Because that's dangerous regardless of whether there's an open spillway or not. So we'll have to ask you guys to help us communicate, to stay clear of the construction.
And we'll certainly do that.
Will the downstream side of the dam have to be reinforced or protected with some sort of chute to prevent the erosion of the dam, the concrete dam, and all this water is coming over?
Right. No, it will not. We were required by FERC to do a study to determine whether we needed to do that or not. And these gates in this picture I'm showing you here, they're 4.5 feet tall. That spillway is 75 feet high. So we were able to evaluate and required by FERC to evaluate whether we needed to reinforce that dam or not in order to accommodate these gates and that additional spillway capacity. And the results of that were that we did not have to reinforce that dam.
Well, and I think, and if I could just add something to that, I think the issue with that is that this spillway is just sitting on the ground, and it's the sheer weight of it that keeps it in place. And by cutting some of that off the top, there was the potential of losing enough mass where potentially it could move. That was the study that you're citing, I think.
I'm not sure, and that is a dam safety question that our dam safety engineer would have to answer exactly how that transpired. Okay, but you're out of my you're out of my wheelhouse here. So all I know is that because of the results of the analysis, we were not required to reinforce that dam. Now at Blewett Falls, we are required to reinforce it, as well as at Great Falls. But because of the size and the construction of this dam, we are not required to reinforce it. So, and that's the extent of my knowledge on that, on dam safety, but it's a good question. So I'd like to go ahead and move on, because I want to tell you guys about another part of this project and what we're going to be doing, partnering with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources to create an artificial reef, and it's going to be a fish attractor. So we are going to actually use the concrete that we remove from the spillway to create deep artificial reefs up through the reservoir here. So these the picture with the little yellow pins, those are the sites where you're going to see barges going up and down the lake, taking the concrete and just placing it in these locations. And the purpose of that is to create additional deep water attractor material that will enhance the fish habitat for species like largemouth bass, crappie, and catfish populations. So if there are fishermen in the crowd, you're going to be, I think, excited about that. As I mentioned, you'll see the barges going up and down the lake that will be taking the concrete to these locations. And when complete, all of these fish attractor reefs will be at least 30 feet deep, and they'll be marked with one of these buoys that you see on the left here. So we're excited about that project. It's a great partnership that we have between Duke Energy, DNR, and we're looking forward to that. Communication and partnering with Lake Wateree Association, our comprehensive relicensing agreement made a point of creating or calling out opportunities that we have to work with Lake Wateree Association to gain support from the community and to help minimize the impact of the construction on the people and the resources of Lake Wateree. So things like cultural resource studies, monitoring and looting, preventing during lowered reservoir levels. We'll ask you guys to help us make sure none of that happens. Fish and wildlife studies, if there is monitoring to be done during the reservoir lowering, then we'll potentially ask for assistance with some of that. I'm not aware of any of that at this point, but if there is an opportunity to do something like that, maybe UofSC wants to do some work during the drawdown, that's certainly an opportunity to do that. Soliciting project support from members, other lake property owners. You guys can read this as well as I can. I don't really need to read it to you, but coordinating activities that require lake use permits from Duke. That's the kind of thing, you guys having us here at this meeting today is an opportunity for us to get the word out about what's happening. And we're also going to be providing, we're developing a communication plan that we'll use to get the word out as well. So we're going to be sending postcards out to the area residents. We're going to be putting newspaper articles in the local and regional newspapers about the work, and we'll do that. We'll do the newspaper information as it gets closer. But so we'll be doing some communicating, and we'll make sure you guys are involved in all of that and helping us communicate that. Access, public access during construction. And I hope most of you all have been able to visit Molly Creek. That's the new access area that we completed in December of 2021. So the ramps at that location are usable with a lake level of approximately 90.5 feet. So those ramps during construction are going to be usable. We've also recently extended the ramps at White Oak access area. And so there will be access on the east side of the lake as well. Buck Hill access area, as I mentioned earlier, will be closed because of the close proximity to the construction. We're going to close that access area. We will also evaluate the other ramps for potential repairs and improvements during the drawdown, because that's the best time to get to them. The operations plan for the Duke Energy swim beaches, the one at Molly Creek, we're also in the process of installing one at Colonel's Creek. So the operations of those swim beaches during the construction will be evaluated once we see what the drawdown will do to that, due to the access of those swim beaches. And other access area facilities such as fishing platforms and picnic areas, those will all be evaluated as we do the drawdown as well. Anything that's not usable, we will close. But if it's, I mean, the fishing platforms should certainly, and picnic areas, of course, will still be usable. So we won't go in and shut the access areas down completely, with the exception of Buck Hill. We will close that one down completely. But the others, if there are usable amenities there, we'll keep them open. This is an update on our access areas. The one on the left, Wateree Creek access area, that was completed in 2019, and that's got a really nice fishing pier. So hopefully that will still be usable. It should be. Molly Creek, as I mentioned, opened in December of 21, and that's a huge access area, and I hope some of you people are able to enjoy it. The amenities include a boat ramp, fishing pier, swim beach, picnic facilities, restrooms, and walking trails. Colonel's Creek, as I mentioned earlier, that one is currently under construction. We expect it to be completed in the fall of 22. The new amenities will include a swim beach, picnic facility, courtesy dock, additional parking and lighting, and restrooms. And then White Oak, as I mentioned earlier, we have new ramp extensions. We're going to put a courtesy dock in there as well, but we'll have to wait till September to do that. So it's scheduled to be opened in May of 22, but the courtesy dock will not be installed until September of 22. And lake use permitting, Kelvin, you want to take it from here?
Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So like Tammy said before, get the contract in and know the duration when the water's going to be up and be down. And, you know, we're sort of going to have to evaluate as things go along, but all the shoreline management guidelines will be enforced during the drawdown, because we have a FERC requirement as well as a state requirement on that. Any work performed lakeward of the full pond contour required Duke Energy's written approval, including excavation, or a lot of people like to call it dredges, shoreline stabilization, and dock maintenance. This will be a good time, as you can view. It usually takes us between 21 to 30 days to approve a normal application. So if you feel like, this is a good time for me to do that upgrade to my shoreline stabilization that I've been wanting to do for years, and I can get in there better when the lake's pulled down. Those applications are good for up to 12 months. So it'll give you a chance to do that dock work or whatever. So just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. Permits, like I said, are valid for 12 months. So plan accordingly. Requests for extensions will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, except for excavations. Our excavation approvals are good for 18 months. So if you submit an application to do some excavation during this drawdown, then you'd have 18 months to do that. Docks may not be extended to reach deeper water during the drawdown without Duke Energy written approval. And heavy equipment should not be operated in the lake bed. Kermit Taylor, who works reports to me and works that area, he's had a lot of questions about when this is actually going to be done, when the drawdown is going to occur. So if you think about it and you get that application, if there's something you've been wanting to do, especially with shoreline stabilization or dock repairs, if you go ahead and get that in, then you'll have 12 months to do it. So you can actually go ahead and get that work done while the lake's down. So that's pretty much the lake use permitting during the drawdown. It's just, and if you have questions, Tammy's going to give you some numbers. And I know that as far as how to contact Lake Services, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you have. But like Tammy said before, a lot of it has to do with this final plan and when the lake's going to be down and everything during the construction period.
And we'll, as I mentioned earlier, we will be providing you more detailed information once we have the contract awarded and the contractor has developed this detailed schedule. We will communicate that to you guys so that, you know, obviously that will help you plan any of this type of work. Thank you, Kelvin.
You're welcome.
And here's the information that Kelvin mentioned. This is our lake information line. We have a telephone number where you can call and hear special messages if you don't have access to the internet or your smartphone. The Duke Energy Lake and Information website is also listed there, as well as the free Lakeview mobile app. I really encourage you guys, if you have not downloaded this app, if you have a smartphone, of course, and you have not downloaded this app, please do so. You can customize the application to give you just information on Lake Wateree. So if you want to know about Lake Wylie and Lake Wateree, you can select the lakes that you want to know about, and then you can sign up to receive text message notifications when we post a special message. So that is really the best way that we can communicate with you guys real time, is to utilize this Lakeview app. Obviously, if you don't have that, this telephone number works. And if you have the internet but don't have a smartphone, you can get the same information from the Duke Energy Lakes and Recreation website. And that address is on this page as well. And with that, I will ask if there are any additional questions.
Yes.
Has a study been done of what you anticipate the maximum lake level would be during flooding once the gates are in place? Is it going to prevent another 106 event?
Tammy, you want to field that? The question was whether, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The question was whether or not there has been a study as to what the maximum lake elevation might be after the gates are installed, and the properties above Wateree are actually a half a foot higher than they are currently.
You know, well, there was a study done back originally when we were evaluating the installation of the gates. You know, this is not designed to eliminate all the floods on Lake Wateree. This is designed to help with the intermediate and smaller floods, but the real high inflow events, it's going to lessen the magnitude, but it's not going to stop Lake Wateree from flooding. And, you know, there was a study done, and it was part of the licensing application, so I'd have to go back and dig it up. But, you know, the point, we couldn't install a gate big enough to handle all the floods at Lake Wateree to completely stop it from flooding. But this is designed to manage, help with the flooding associated with the intermediate and smaller floods. So I don't know if that really answered your question or not. Yes, there was a study done. What the magnitude of that is, I'd have to pull the study out to see it or to review it, because I really don't remember that off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I don't think that actually addressed the magnitude of the floods, but the frequency of the floods, right? Because if my memory serves me correctly, once those elevations were changed to increase them by a half a foot, the frequency of the floods went up drastically. I think that's the study we're talking about. In any event, we'll try and find it and distribute it to the folks here.
Okay, and who is this? Who's speaking?
This is Jim Latrulia.
Okay, hi Jim. I couldn't see who was talking. You know, I'll be happy to help you pull that study up if you need me to help you find it. But I know the magnitude of the floods were evaluated in the KEOPS model. You remember I don't know if you were involved in the licensing process, but there was a KEOPS model developed for evaluating this, and it was done in that KEOPS model, and the magnitude and the frequency of the floods was evaluated. So I'll have to get with Ed.
Tammy, there was a question on the chat that they were asking, is there going to be a courtesy duck in Clearwater all summer?
I'm sorry, is there going to be a courtesy duck where?
Clearwater.
White Oak.
White Oak.
White Oak. No,
Yeah, White Oak. We can't install that dock until September of 22 because of the fish moratorium right now. DNR has a moratorium for in-water work between, is it March and June? I can't remember. And maybe
That's correct. That's correct. You can't till through the end of June.
Right. So we have to wait until after the end of June to install it. And our contractor has said that he can get to that in September.
Tammy, is this presentation that you just showed us, can we get a copy of that so we can post it up on Facebook as well as our website?
Sure. I sent it to Dale, and I can send you a PDF if you'd rather have the PDF, because that might be easier to post.
I think we have it. Thank you, Tam.
All right.
Okay. All right. Other questions?
Any other questions?
As I mentioned earlier, you'll be receiving some communication about the schedule. We're going to send out some postcards, kind of a mass mailing, to make sure folks in the area are aware of this project that is starting. And so be on the lookout. You know, if you get a little postcard from Duke, don't trash it, read it. So, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Lynn or our Lake Services information. Our Lake Services line. We can always get back to you.
I think we might have one more time for you.
Yeah, just real quick. When they drive down, will the DNR go in and remark any hazards, things like that?
Tammy, when the water comes down and new hazards emerge, will DNR be doing any marking of those?
I'm not aware of a plan to do that, but I can certainly ask DNR about that.
Okay.
Get back to you.
Okay. I think we've exhausted all of the questions. Tammy, thank you so much to you and your team for presenting this information to the group. It's really very valuable to us to understand what you guys are doing, being the owner of this property that we live on and recreate on. So
great. Well, we certainly are here to answer questions. If you guys have additional questions, thank you for having us today, and thank you for accommodating my schedule, because my husband's ready to pull out of the driveway on vacation. So I need
you enjoy yourself. Have a wonderful vacation. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're going to get back on the association business, and I guess this is the point in time where we actually talk amongst ourselves, see if we have any new.
Speaking into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. So this appears to be the time where we're gonna speak amongst ourselves to see if we have any new representatives that want to come forward, or if we're going to maintain our existing group as I read it to you earlier. Any new folks want to get involved?
Jim, do you have a map of the areas?
There actually is in that red map. You can pop that up.
Which map?
There's a map in that one PowerPoint that has the financials. I think it's one of the last slides.
Last slide?
Second to last slide, man.
You're talking about the area reps?
Yeah, the area reps.
Okay. That was a different slide.
Okay, folks, we're gonna take about a 10-minute break, let you all discuss this amongst yourselves, and when we come back, we'll determine if there are any changes to the roster. Thanks. We would like to spend a couple minutes telling you about some of the things they're doing in their legislative body to benefit you all and the folks that use the lake. So with that, let's have a nice round of applause for Julie.
It's a great day in Kershaw County.
It sure is.
For those of you that live in Fairfield County, it's probably a good day. Everybody says, oh, he's a general, he knows about what's happening in the Ukraine. Well, this is all I know. There was a long line outside the food store there in Moscow, and one Russian turned to the other and said, I'm tired of this long line. I'm gonna go get a gun and I'm gonna shoot Putin. And about an hour later, he came back and the fellow said, well, I thought you've already shot Putin. He said, no, the line to shoot Putin is longer than this line. Look, I want to send you my congratulations. Look how many people came. Really. And this shows the power of the American way of government, that less government is more government. Less government is more government when the people are involved. And that's the great American pronoun, we the people. So thank you for doing this. We can't run this county, and I'm the chairman of the county, unless the people are engaged. I just spent 2.5 hours picking up trash on the highways with volunteers, JROTC, the football team, the baseball team, citizens from all over the county, and some of you right here, right? Yep. And if we together address the litter problem and the lake problem and all the other problems, we'll continue to be the great county that we are. So thank you. I have a couple of points. Look, when I came in as chairman 7 years ago, they asked me to bring jobs to the county. We have been successful in doing that. But oh darn, we're like the dog that caught the bus. Prosperity is starting to creep in and growth is an issue. And my challenge as chairman is to give you the best services at the least cost with the least taxes. And so we have set up an ad hoc group to address the growth in the county. So we'll have great schools, a great lake, a great river, great services, security, and all the things we need to raise our children, and in my case, grandchildren. So that's what I'm here for, to make sure you understand that that's where we're headed. I have talked to Jim and Dale a little bit about water quality. I salute you for the presentation you've had here from Duke, but I've gotten some pressure recently from the fishing community, both in the county, in the state, and from national level, that they want to improve the black bass population. Just to put that one to bed real quick, we've brought in DNR. They're going to do what they call a shock treatment or something. They're going to electrify your fish. And they're going to do a census of the fish that come to the top. No, they're not dead, so don't be out there with nets. But they're going to do a fish count. And I'll come back to you, Jim, and give you a full report. Thank you again for doing this. We're committed to this lake, to this environment, and to this county to keep it a great place. Jim, I think I'm done unless you have any questions.
I appreciate you coming down here.
Okay,
Thank
great
you.
day in Kershaw County. Thank you.
Okay, next up on our agenda, we're going to have a treasurer's report from Johnny Beal. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to present our annual financial report for the year ending 2021. You have, there we go, the balance sheet. Our total money in the bank is $271,033.40 at the end of December. And if you'll roll over to the next page, roll down. Our current income for dues was right at $30,000. We had an excellent investment. Our investment account had an outstanding year. Yeah. And all our expenses were paid, and we had a net income of almost $25,000. If you'll run to the next slide, thank you. Our budget that the board approved for 2022, you'll see that we are trying to keep that number as close as we can to the amount of income, which is around $30,000. We have a budget of $33,000. We cut several things out of the budget. We want to be fiscally conservative, and we don't want to spend more than we take in, just like any successful operation. This is for your information. It's being recorded, and there should be some sheets on your table, and I stole your sheets, and I'll bring them back to you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to say that we have had some challenges with the membership in recent years, and we're going to try and bolster the membership. And I'd like to ask everybody out there that is a member to try and find a member, right? Because if we get everybody in our family of members to get one member to join, we'll obviously double our membership, right? And it sounds very simple, but we need to take simple steps to ensure the longevity of the organization. And as you can see from the financial statement, the organization is very financially sound. So the more people we can get to contribute to our income, the more we can contribute to these programs that benefit us and to help us ensure that the water quality is being addressed, looked at, and so forth. So please, I ask if anybody knows of people that use the lake or that would be interested in participating or even joining, this is the call to try and bolster our membership.
Jim, you said there were trifolds for recruiting people?
Yes, we do have some slick, little slick trifolds, and
Where can we get those?
that's a great question, Jack, and I'm going to find out in just a minute. They're in storage somewhere. Oh,
I have, thinking I have some available.
okay.
I think there's some out there somewhere. I'm not sure where. If we need to, I think we're trying to get some new ones printed.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that was a great resource to actually help people understand, who we are and what we do, provide some nice glossy photos and so forth. So I think, yeah, we'll try and get that in everybody's hands so that all the area reps can go around, meeting the new people and so forth. Mary Ellen, you have something?
And if they want to direct them to me, I will send the information on the email.
Okay, excellent.
What did she say?
Well, if you have somebody that's interested in it, you can direct them to Mary Ellen and she'll send the information to them via email.
Okay.
I also think it's great to have them in your car where you can just dole them out as you meet and see people, right?
Sure.
Right. So with that said, we do have some really great programs that we facilitate, and the one that we're going to talk about next is the Water Watch program. And I'd like to bring Randy up to give you guys an update on what's happening on that front. Thank you, Randy.
Is it coincidence that the guy representing the biggest number in the budget gets called up right after the budget presentation?
Hey, there's a lot of value.
That's no coincidence. Actually, the real meat of what's going on with Water Watch is coming up after the break. UofSC faculty people will be presenting to you. They're going to do a great job, much better than I can, to let you know, to bring you up to speed with what's going on. I want to mainly say thank you for the support. not just LWA as an organization, but especially the pass-through donations that you folks have made over the years that are earmarked for Water Watch. That means an awful lot to us, and we're going to put that money to good use very soon because we've got to replace the little Water Watch boat motor. And I was hoping to get an update from West Doolittle this morning, but I don't have a time for you on that. But a lot of that money is going to go towards replacing that motor. It's badly needed. So thanks very much. But also thank you to the volunteers. And that's my main point this morning, is to let you know that we do have opportunities for boat operators, boats and boat operators. We're not doing so much with ride-along crewing the way that we have done in the past. And the reason for that is because we've got so many more students involved, thanks to the expanded support that we've gotten from UofSC that you're going to hear about again in a few minutes. But these students are specifically trained for the tasks that they're doing, and we need very consistent work, you know, run after run. And so we're not asking for the level of ride-along crew people. Again, if you've got a boat and are willing to operate it, please let me know. You can reach me through the LWA website. There's a link to get to Water Watch, and you can contact me that way. You're not going to be committed to do anything immediately. If you step up and say you're willing to use your boat, we'll just put you on a list, and as opportunities arise, we'll contact you and give you the opportunity to participate, and you can always say no, so don't worry about that. The point with additional students, I just want to talk a little bit about return on investment, because the 15,000 that's up here is a big number. But just to give you an example of how well this money is leveraged, we had a Water Watch run yesterday, and where our contract with UofSC calls for 2 students to be involved in these runs yesterday, and this has become typical over the last recent months. We had, in addition to our 2 boat operators, we had 4 students out there doing research of projects of the nature that you'll be hearing about later on. We also had a representative from South Carolina Wateree Association with us. So that's five resources out there where our contract provides for 2. Dr. Scott last year in this meeting talked about all the other research that UofSC has brought to Lake Wateree, and the leveraging of the money that you invest has really multiplied into hundreds of thousands of dollars just over the last few years. So there's a tremendous amount of work going on. The frustration is there's not a solution for algae yet. Everybody's frustrated with that, including me, because I have to put up with it too. But because of this work that's going on, we're really on the cutting edge nationally, and Jeff, maybe even globally, with finding solutions to the algae and really understanding it. So it's an investment that's going to pay huge dividends for years to come. So again, if you're interested in getting out on the water, reach me through the website, and we'll be glad to get you on the list. We've always got opportunities popping up.
Thank you,
That's
Randy.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. Okay. Next up, I'd like to bring Milt Marley up to talk about the Lake Wateree River Sweep.
Thank you, or chair, sir. The mission of LWA is to protect and preserve our lake. And one way to do that is to help keep it as clean as possible. LWA and the former WOA began river sweeps several years ago, and one of the first in the chain of lakes to do so. And river sweep is a 1 morning a year event. And What we do is we meet at one of several of the boat docks on the lake. People bring their own pontoons or other boats. Volunteers show up who are not on the boat to ride on those boats. And we go around the lake and we pick up trash. John Searby, John, would you stand up? I know his name is, but John's our river keeper. He does a tremendous job and coordinates river sweep all up and down the lakes. You can register online to participate in river sweep. Or you can just show up and fill out the registration form. In the past few years, we've averaged about 5,000 tons of trash. And fortunately, in the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen less trash come down our way because of the river sweep efforts from lakes north of us. So it's better, but as you know, particularly on some of these coves and islands, it can be pretty nasty after a high water event. But we need more volunteers. Now, last year, 80% of the folks who volunteered for river sweep didn't live on the lake, but just come and use it. So please volunteer. We think it's going to be about on October 1st this year.
That's right.
Is that right? Okay. So anyway, it's a great opportunity to have fun, meet neighbors, and do something for the good of the community. Is Patty Ingram here? All right, Patty is our local coordinator for LWA's River Sweep, and she's done a great job. Patty has a planning committee. Here's another opportunity to volunteer. We always need folks to serve on that planning committee. So consider doing that. Keep up with the news on the website about River Sweep and look for more announcements. It's just one day a year and it's just in the morning. Before COVID, we used to have an end of River Sweep get together, which was really fun. Food, drinks, social. COVID stopped all that. We hope to be able to continue that soon. So that's River Sweep.
Thank you, Bill.
Milt is also responsible for the life jacket program at the landings. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about that too, right after we get to George's question.
Jimmy, you might or Bill mentioned that all necessary equipment for river sweep is provided. So you don't have to worry about getting your hands dirty, even the picker-uppers, little things. Everything's there. It's a really fun time.
If you didn't hear that, George was saying that the river sweep staff provides all the tools necessary to help pick up trash. Grabbers, gloves, we've got water, tarps to keep your pontoon clean. All of that is provided. So thank you, George. Okay. Life jacket program. I think it was about 10 years ago at a WOA board meeting, the chairman brought a gentleman from Georgia to speak to the WOA board. His son and grandson were drowned on this lake in Georgia, and he started this life jacket loaner program. So the WOA board decided to pick that up, and that was the beginning of it. And of course, since the merger, we now have life jacket loaner boards, thanks to Duke, at 6 locations. They are at Colonel's Creek, June Creek, Taylor's Creek, Wateree Creek, and in Kershaw County, Buck Hill, and Clearwater Cove, White Oak.
And Molly Creek.
And Molly Creek is the new one. So Colonel's Creek dock will be closed. Molly Creek is going to replace it. Duke has already got the board up at the new Molly Creek Recreation Center. I'm going to tell you about each board as a volunteer who keeps up with maintaining the jackets. And I want to give them a shout out. At Buck Hill, Gary Albowitz is our volunteer who keeps up with those jackets. At Clearwater Cove, Patty Ingram again. Colonel's Creek, Marty Saltis. Hey, Marty, raise your hand. I know Patty is in here. Is Gary here? Let's see. Okay. At June Creek, Alan Martin. Alan here. Taylor's Creek, Jim, right here. Chair. And at Wateree Creek, Stacy Albowitz. Stacy's here. Where's Stacy? Come on, Stacy. There he is. Thank you. Duke built the life jacket loaner boards, and the jackets are hung on those boards. There have been 3 sizes: the little ones for the children, the junior size, and then the adults. Sadly, some of them disappeared.
Imagine that.
Yeah, we have a problem with theft. We tried to deal with that by changing from orange jackets to yellow jackets. It might have helped, but it didn't solve the problem, particularly at Buck Hill, where poor Gary has to keep replacing them. One of the things we've learned is that we don't hang all of them up. There are 12 hooks. We're getting a little more careful with how many we put up at each time. The Sawtowel Foundation from New York State this year has provided us with 76 brand new yellow jackets. And we are so grateful to them. And they're being printed right now. And the sponsors for the printing are Lake Wateree Baptist Church, Lake Wateree Presbyterian Church, and Kendall's Restaurant help pay for the printing this year and probably for next year too. There's no cost, therefore, for membership. Everything so far has been taken care of financially. So the purpose of the program is to save lives. And while we have problems with thief stealing, as some board members have said, you know, if we can save one life, it's worth the life jacket loan program. So that's it. Do we have any? Oh, I got to tell you one more story. The woman who contacted me about the Sawtowel Foundation turned out to be the daughter of the gentleman from Georgia who came to the World Board meeting. So it was her brother and I guess grandfather who drowned in that Georgia lake. So she is the one who contacted first Clyde McFadden and then got in touch with me. So we're just very grateful for this act, and we hope we can save a life or two on our lake. Thank you. Any questions?
Do you encourage donations of vests if people have extras laying around the house? Just bring them down and hang them on boards?
What do you think, Jim?
I think it's a great idea.
I do too.
Do you want to get involved with the please return?
Just put a Sharpie on there.
Oh, there.
Do you want to get that label that says please return by,
Oh, it's on it.
No, for the ones that donate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's good. If you're gonna volunteer, if you take a Sharpie or something like that, please return, because each jacket says, you know, managed by LWA, please return, sponsored by Talcom Foundation and Kendall's Restaurant.
Well, even if they steal the life jacket, maybe it'll save the thief's life.
You know, the saddest thing, the wife of a board member was in one of the shops in Camden.
Goodwill.
Goodwill.
Oh, no.
Yes,
Oh, no.
and she saw a life jacket that somebody had sold there, and I mean, you talk about low life. Oh, luckily, some of us have in our heart community service, and that's what we're here for. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. Thank you, man. It's a wonderful program that you're involved with, and we appreciate all your hard work. Okay, next up on the agenda, we're going to hear from our Vice Chair, Ray Garcia, about committees.
Sure. Well, the thing is, Lake Wateree has a variety of different, to speak right.
Well, you need to,
What?
they can't hear you. Go ahead.
Come on, Ray, we want to see you.
Yeah, they want to see you.
We want to see you, Ray.
I'm gonna break down.
Show off those legs.
Well, I still have them. Thank you, Jim. Lake Wateree has a variety of different committees. I mean, and I think that Jim at the very beginning had mentioned about volunteers. You know, we have the finance, we have some like Water Watch, we have also some cleaning committees. We also have public affairs, and then also we have the membership committees that we have. You know, and if there's something that you know, if you have some time and you want to be involved with Lake Wateree Association and having more of an active, you know, participant, if you want to be, you know, come in, you know, we're more than happy to, you know, welcome you in. Thing is we have our monthly meetings, and we've been doing Zoom as well as some in person, and we're hoping that as we're coming around the corner here, that we'll do some more in-person meetings. But and then the thing is, the meetings themselves are not just about the board and the board members. It should be, it's open to you too. If you want to come in and say, well, what are they talking about? What is it we're trying to accomplish? You guys are more than welcome. But this is one of the things that, and again, when we're looking at participation and the desire to help, this is where we have area reps, and the area reps are supposed to be the spokesman, and they're the ones that's supposed to be attending the meetings, and then they communicate what transpired, what took place there, and bring it back to the people that are associated with those areas that they're supposed to be supporting. And what we're going to try to do as board members is that we need to see about getting the minutes of all these meetings done, take a look and see what we have, agree on what the content is, send it to the area reps, and the area reps should be communicating with you at least once a month and saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. These are some of the things that we're trying to accomplish. What is your feedback? What are some of the concerns that you have? And as those area reps attend the meetings, they are basically the spokesman for you. Okay, they're your ambassador. So if there's something that concerns you that, you know, is not being addressed or you think should be addressed, contact your area rep. And again, we looked at, you had the slide that came up here already a couple of times up on here on the presentation. They have the people's names on it. You have a question, contact them. But again, this is where the involvement of the area reps as well as the alternatives are really important. And if you want to be involved, that's one of the places that you can be part of and help contribute to this, you know, the association, and help it be more proactive and more, you know, productive. Anybody have any questions?
Have a list of.
Go ahead.
Do you have a standard date and time for your meetings?
We have normally had it on the first Thursday of each month. But we're gonna need to see about, and I'm gonna work with Johnny Deal here. He's been involved in many of the communications matters. And we need to go ahead and try to update our website that we have with more of current information. Right now that it's being updated to a certain extent, but not to the extent that we would like to have. We want the information out to be more informative. Look, like say for instance, what we discussed here, I mean, it's easy to go ahead and put a PowerPoint presentation or the video of the Zoom meeting on the boat, but that doesn't really capture on some of the things that we consider important. And this is what we're going to take on as an action item for later on down the line. What is it that we should do, or what is it that we should be doing? And these are the things that we need to look at ourselves and say, how are we contributing and what can we do to improve this association and also the water that we're basically, taking advantage of. All right. I don't have any other questions? Anybody on the Zoom?
He had one.
Is there a list of committees?
We have some, but we need to, this is where Jim and I are gonna have to sit down and reevaluate and take a look at this. I mean, we can formulate and create as many, association or committees as possible. But the thing is, we need to clearly identify what is the mission of that committee and who's gonna be chairing those committees. And what is it that, is there something that, when you start looking at costs, is there gonna be a cost associated with that committee? And then if that's the case, we need to evaluate what was approved in our financial budget and how does that impact it, or if any. And not to say that what was actually approved on the budget is basically written in stone, because it's not. If there's something that we look at and reevaluate and say, guess what, this is something worthwhile and worth investing in, we can, as a board, we can go through and we can vote on it and make an amendment to that budget for this year. I hope I answered your questions. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just taking notes as far as Secretariat. We have Area 4 and Area 12 have no representatives present here, but are they on Zoom? And if they are they staying?
Well, the thing is with the Zoom meeting, we're actually going to record it, and this is something that Jim and I are going to have to. We're going to have to chat about some of these things, because the thing is, if you went through and you took a look at the bylaws, and thank you very much for that question. One of the things that actually listed in the bylaws that the area rep is an important role and a responsibility. If you don't feel like I'm not going to participate, I'm not going to come to the meetings. And according to our bylaws, is that if a rep or an alternative are not present 3 times, then they're basically removed, and can be removed. And this is something that we should discuss and say, we need people that are committed and participating. Not say, put me down on it, but I'm not going to show up to anything.
Well, my question is, are they present on?
I got it. I'm gonna get on that. Just, I'll give a call out in just a second.
Oh, great.
Yes, no problem.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, Ann, thank you. So I think Ann had a question as to whether or not on the Zoom call, we have any area reps from Area 12 and Area 4. So if you're on the Zoom call and you're representing Area 12 or Area 4, or would like to represent Area 12 or Area 4, please let us know. Okay, well, at this point, we're just gonna take a quick break, a quick 10-minute break. And then we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of this whole deal here. We're gonna hear from UofSC, and they're gonna tell us all about the water quality and all the things that they're doing to help us understand how and why. So take a quick break, and as soon as we get back, we're gonna hear this wonderful presentation from the folks at UofSC. Thank you. Thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce our guests from the University of South Carolina. We have Dr. Jeff Scott, we have Dr. John Furry, and we have Dr. Ann Orbanis joining us here today with a presentation. I'm not sure who all would like to start, but I'm happy to turn it over. Thank you.
Can you move this to the next one?
Yeah, the other one. That's
Okay, all right. I'm glad to be here today and meet you all in person. I'm Annie Bourbonnais. I'm the liaison officer Water Watch. So I've been involved with Water Watch for a year now. And this is Everything okay?
Yep, one second.
Actually, I just put a picture of the run yesterday with on the small boat. So you see two students sampling the headwaters on on Lake Wateree. And yeah, so today I'm going to talk about not only the Water Watch, what we've been doing, but also another project I'm involved in, EPSCOR, $6 million NSF EPSCOR project that we've been trying to leverage our effort with Water Watch. So that project used autonomous surface vehicle to collect high special resolution data, water quality data. So I'm going to talk about that project as well. Okay, so I just wanted to show that I have lots of collaborators as part of the Water Watch, but I also have many collaborators from several institutions across at least the eastern coast of the U.S., spanning from Maine, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Rhode Island as well. So I just wanted to put all those faces up, and that's part of a big EPSCOR grant looking at how we can improve water quality monitoring to better predict harmful algal bloom. So please, next slide. Okay, so I guess you're all aware that harmful algal blooms or harmful cyanobacterial blooms are not fun. But they are increasingly common in South Carolina Lake. So right now we don't necessarily understand the environmental driver that cause those blooms, and that's why it's really important to have a program like Water Watch to better monitor water quality, to better understand how, when the bloom develop. And one thing that's really important to measure as well is nutrients, because nutrients is like the food for the algae. So if they don't have nutrients, they cannot grow. So two of the main nutrients that the algae use to grow are nitrogen and phosphorus. So you can just, okay, so as I said, we try to use a combination of autonomous surface vehicle, drones, and discrete sampling to understand where, when, and how the cyanobacterial bloom develop and spread in the lake. And eventually we want to use that data to input into more complicated or more complex model to better be able to predict those bloom over time. And like I said, that's part of a big $6 million EPSCOR project. So I'm really leveraging on these resources to supply the Water Watch program with water quality sound and other instrumentation to better understand how we can ultimately remediate these blooms. Next slide. So like I said, we use ASV, autonomous surface vehicle, drone, and discrete sampling. And that's another picture of two of my students on Lake Wateree, I think last summer. And one of the little bit autonomous surface vehicle, the jet yak that we use to collect the data. Can go on the next slide. So what we've been doing so far is we've been sampling several sites on Lake Wateree, but as part of the EPSCOR project, we had at least three sites that we've been monitoring every 2 weeks during the growing season from March to, I think, October. And we've been monitoring two shallow stations, one with bloom and one without bloom. And the one with bloom was close to the Shaw Recreational Center. And a deep water station that's close to the dam. So the location are on the map there. And of course, we've been involved with the Water Watch program that collects samples every 2 months around the lake. So that's the Water Watch sampling program. It's quite extensive sampling station all around the lake, including headwaters. One thing we added this year that was not part of water watch activity, water watch program before was that we now analyze nutrients in the headwaters samples. So we collect this quick sample there and we bring back to the lab and we analyze nutrients. And I think that's important because it will allow better understanding the sources of nutrients to the lake. And of course, that allows us to better understand the blooms. So we can go to the next slide. And we also install at those stations the monitoring buoys. So who has seen those orange buoys? So these are our buoys. So those buoys, if you look down those buoys, there are sensors. In fact, there is dissolved oxygen and temperature sensors installed on those buoys, and that allows to also the time and date, and that allows to collect high temporal resolution data on all the lake changes over time, and deep profile as well. So I don't have the data today for Lake Wateree. We collected the data. I just need to process all this data and quality control, but I promise next year I'll show it. But just as an example, we did the same in Lake Murray, and you can see that you really can understand at different depth. You understand the stratification, all the, and that all the oxygen and temperature varies with that, and those factors will influence bloom formation development. So I'm just showing an example, but it's really high resolution data, temporal resolution data. And here we can see, that's fine. And yeah. So we also, I talked about the autonomous surface vehicle. So here I have a little video if you want to start the little video. So I just want to show you what you will be seeing this summer on your lake, because we're gonna use those little jet yak, they call. So they go around. They can be operated by someone, but they can also be operated remotely. They're really cute, and well, I think so, right? So you might see those little boats in your lake, and those boats will be collecting. So below the boat there will be a song, water quality song, and also that will collect water quality data at really high spatial resolution. So this is, yeah. Now you know, and they will measure the different parameters such as depth, pressure, temperature, pH, which is a measure of how acidic or basic the water is, dissolved oxygen, total algae, and turbidity, which is a measure of the clarity, how clear the water is. We also have a new $12,000 nitrate sensor, which is a nitrogen species. So I'm really excited about what we're gonna be doing this summer. So as an example, of course, we've been doing lots of work last summer with our partner in Maine and New Hampshire, and I'm showing some data, similar data in Lake Sabatus and Lake Sunapee, and we're actually working on some manuscript to that kind of show that you can reveal, using those autonomous surface vehicle, you can reveal great spatial variability. And for instance, I think the turbidity here, like Lake Sabatus, and the dissolved oxygen in Lake Sunapee, that are both in Maine and New Hampshire. And yeah, so that's quite exciting. And we did the same, that's last month. We tried the same to go around Lake Murray, because it's closer to UofSC, to test, the best condition to get the best data, the best high spatial resolution data using those little jet yak. So we went around Lake Murray and we collected temperature, pH, and dissolved oxygen along the trajectory. So we want to do something similar in Lake Murray this summer, where there is the most extensive blooms from Glenvia. So And so we discussed a lot about what would be a good area to, because we cannot go around the whole lake, because we calculated it would take, I think, pretty much a day, more than a day to do. So we had to choose the most interesting area. And I was thinking about that area here, including Big Wateree, Taylor Creek, Dutchman Creek, because I think after talking with many of you, this is where the blooms are. So if you have any suggestion that would be better, I'm open to it. We're also thinking, due to the construction with Duke Energy, to move all our buoy toward this location as well. So you might see those orange buoy migrate toward those locations. I hope that's fine with you. I will invite you to keep an eye on them if you don't mind. Those are important. They're expensive scientific instrumentation on them, and they will give good data to better understand the blooms. So we also do, as part of EBSCOR project and water wash, manual sampling. That is, we go to the field, we collect water sample, and we bring back those water sample to the lab, mostly for nutrient analysis. And I have a collaboration with a phytoplankton expert that measure the phytoplankton community in those water samples. So, and again, I'm not going to go into detail more, but I would like to thank Kara that has been doing a fantastic job putting together all those reports, those water watch reports. She's actually the person in charge for the water watch report. So those reports are available to everybody. You're all familiar with the website, right? The Water Watch website. So you can go on there and then you can just click, and they are really available to everybody. So if you want to see what the data looks like or what we've been doing, and so please go look on the website, and you can look over those reports, have access to the data. So there are many remaining questions, of course, looking at those water quality data. One of those questions that brings to perhaps John Clary's talk more is the role of the sediment in supplying nutrients to support Lenvia's growth. Analyzing the dissolved phosphorus and nitrogen in the water, we realize that there is really little phosphorus that is present in the water. So sediments probably play a big role in supplying and sustaining those Lenvia's bloom. Slide. And that will be the focus of some of my other upcoming projects, but also I have currently a project with an undergrad student at Magellan Award looking at how we can determine the nitrogen source to the lake at the headwater station using stable isotopes. I would like in the future investigating more the role of sedimentary phosphorus and supplying the food for those Lenvia. So yeah, I don't know if you have any question about anything at present today. Yes.
You call the blooms harmful. What do you mean by that? Is it harmful to the environment, people, pets?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't think I will elaborate. That will be the focus of Maggie's presentation. So I think after Maggie's presentation, you will understand more, like what's our understanding of what it means, what the harmful means, right? Yes. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I leave you on a suspense, but so we have to. Yeah. So keep your attention. You have to. Yeah. You have a question? Okay, so there is a question from, well, two questions. I don't know which one actually. They both don't mind.
They're both going like this.
Okay, yes.
When you have those little yellow things running around, is everybody going to be watching?
Yes, of course, we're there. And we also have, so actually, that's my colleague, Yanis Requestis in the computer and engineering department. And his PhD student, Ibrahim, is actually working on an algorithm to make the boat avoid obstacle. So that's part of his PhD thesis, is he has to find ways to make the boat avoid obstacles by itself as well.
I was
So-
really more thinking of people bothering them.
Oh, you were wondering about people, but we're gonna be there. It's gonna be during our other sampling that we're doing. So, we're gonna be there on the lake and looking at the boat around. Yeah, and there will be someone on the boat. By the way, there's gonna be someone on the boat.
Those little boats, little people.
Actually, Graham is not small at all, so he's, yeah. But yeah, he's gonna be on the boat, this summer. I don't think we're at the point where we want to have those boats be, completely autonomous, so we're gonna have someone in them, I think, for this summer at least.
Can they deliver hot dogs and soda?
I guess we can, depending on the, yeah, we can, maybe we should start a business, that could be a good idea.
The slide that you had, which outlined the nutrients that you were capturing, and it showed that the phosphorus was very low and the nitrogen was very large.
Yeah.
Was that the surface versus the bottom?
Oh, yeah, so those were the surface water. And it was on the surface versus the bottom, it was just the nitrogen versus the phosphorus.
Would those numbers look different sampling them from the bottom?
Yeah, they would look different sampling at the bottom, of course. But since the algae, well, and that's a good question because then it's a benthic algae. It depends. So in the shallow station, I would suspect that it's not, if it's all mixed, the nutrients should not look different, but in the deeper water, it will look different, but then Lembia cannot grow there because there is no light, there is not enough light. So yeah, for shallow station, it should be well mixed. So this should be similar. But yeah, that's something that even when I look at deeper in the water column, there is no phosphorus, dissolved phosphorus in the water column itself to support the growth. So they have to take their phosphorus somewhere, right?
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I think largely we're trying to figure out where a lot of the nutrients come from, right?
Yeah, exactly. And part of that dissolved phosphorus is also, well, first of all the phosphorus that's easily assimilated by those algae is not, there's zero concentration during the bloom. Part of what's there, it's organic, so it might not be even available for the algae. So that's another consideration. There is they need to have a source of phosphorus that, either comes from, it needs to be coming from the sediment. So we need to, if we plan it, that's important for mitigation, because if we want to mitigate those blooms, we need to target, that means we need to target the sediment, right?
Yes.
So that's really the first step toward better finding solution at this point. So.
What role does vegetation washing into the water play?
Yeah, that has a big role actually, because well, when you wash vegetation, you wash nutrients too, and nutrients of food, right? So, and if you wash vegetation, you also wash organic material that can decompose and exemplify. Yeah, so.
I live on White Oak Creek, and I'm noticing that the mallard ducks will eat that algae. We may have 10 or 15 of them standing on their heads, trying to get the algae off the bottom.
No.
Send them over to my creek.
Yeah, do you keep seeing those ducks, like, do they disappear mysteriously after a while?
Sure. We step out at our window.
But I mean, I'm interested to see if we would tag those ducks, like how long they survive after doing that. I don't know. Maybe Maggie can inform you more about what could happen if they eat the algae. I wouldn't do that personally. I wouldn't recommend it. Dr. Scott had a question at the back, and I'm sorry, I kind of.
One of the real important she is going to enable us to go three-dimensional with the picture of the lake. And that is really important to understanding the long-term conditions in the lake. And so bringing this new advanced technology really is going to give us a environment we need
to be able to predict and better understand the lake. So I just wanted to point that out to you, it's really cool stuff. But it's also really essential stuff, moving us forward. We talked about that a year ago, when we talked about the transition about urban ag doing this, so it's just really important.
Yeah, thank you. And we also make sure that, at least in my case, I'm really concerned. I want to make sure the data that we produce are really good quality, excellent quality, that year after year they will be able to compare, because that's really important when you look at long time trends. You don't want any discrepancies, so it's good to have as we are more and more involved with the years, like, you know, we can be, we'll make sure that we produce a high quality data set of the water quality in the lake. So yeah, there is another question here.
Last year we had a significant period of heavy foam concentration.
Oh yeah.
Determined that there were heavy loads, some other nutrients or other things entering the lake.
Yeah, DEC actually sent some samples to my lab for that, and I was surprised that that was coming from a mill, right? Those and a paper mill, I think, and I analyzed, and there was no nutrient necessarily in those samples. Like, there was a bit of ammonium, but there was no nitrate. So maybe it wasn't, but yeah, it didn't bring this necessarily a nutrient to sustain the algae bloom, but I'm sure it was bring other chemical that were not necessarily pleasant for the lake that would create that foam. But I didn't see any nutrient in that source. And I had the water from the mill, because the egg brought that to my lab, and I was able to look more specifically at that. But I couldn't find any. I don't think it was a great source of nutrient, at least. Yeah. Is there any other question for me? Yep.
Have you done any studies whether bubbling or fountains or movement of the water reduces the blooms in shallow waters?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what's the effect of motion on the limbia. Limbia is a benthic algae, so it's kind of attached to the sediment, right? I don't think that motion will detach the algae. Like, I mean, you know, it's there to stay. It's quite.
You would put your propeller in it and pop it up, because then you release the toxins.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to break it. I think Maggie will talk more about what happens if you break the algae. Was your question more directed in the sense that when you go on the lake with your boat, you're afraid that you would kind of get that into your propeller and break?
Around my docks, I'm just wondering if a bubbling system or fountain.
Oh yeah. That's a good question, because that comes back to my question from the sediment. If the phosphorus if the food to sustain those algae growth comes from the sediment, then yeah, maybe an aeration system could be a good way, because the phosphorus in the sediment is only released under anoxic conditions. So if you bubble it, you oxygenate the water, and potentially the phosphorus is not available anymore to the algae. So maybe that could be a good way, but I think Dr. Shaw could talk more about that, because Dr. Tim Shaw is a big phosphorus expert. So I don't know if Tim, if you want to add some to that, but
just real quick, there's sort of two components to the phosphorus release.
Could you come to the microphone and speak?
Yeah, I don't know if you would mind to just come. I'm sorry to talk.
Dr. Perry is going to talk about this.
Yeah.
I'd rather not steal his thunder. Why don't we leave the questions after his talk?
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually will be the focus of Dr. Ferry's talk. So I think all our talks are well in the good order. Are you ready? Is there any more question for me? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
See, can you pull that up? I'm gonna keep my coffee up here because my allergies have been going nuts the last couple of days. Hope you don't mind if I. All right. Well, thanks for having us here. So for those of you who are not too familiar with why USC has started coming here, probably about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, USC received a grant from the National Institutes of Health to study what are referred to as oceans and human health. Now, we're not oceans here, but we're close to them, and the Oceans and Human Health program has traditionally included some studies of lakes. This lake is particularly interesting because there's so many things going on in it. All right, so we started coming here probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Can we go to the next slide, please? And in particular, right at the time, so you know this guy, Dick, where are you at? There he is. Next slide. Now, hang on, because this is actually a very important slide. Right around the time that grant showed up, Dick gave us a call and asked us to come out and take a look at some of the water around his dock. And we were actually, I have to say, planning to work on a number of lakes in Texas at the time. We were not planning to come here. But when he brought us out there, he showed us this stuff. All right, you can see the green stuff floating there, and I'm sure you've all seen this before. And he had these 5 questions for us, and these questions have basically shaped what we've been doing in this lake for the last several years. Okay, and so these questions are probably the same ones you've all asked, and I'm going to read them even though they're on the screen because they're so important. What is this stuff that we're looking at? Why is it here? What is it doing? That's really important. Can it hurt us? That's kind of tied up to question 3. And can we make it go away? And I know that's the question that a lot of you have on your minds right now. Unfortunately, I got to tell you, the National Institutes of Health are not funding very much research in can you make it go away. That's not their mission. There are other agencies that have that as their mission. So we'll let you know where we're at. Can we go to the next, please? The first thing, and I know you've heard this term before, but what is it? It's Lyngbya, but it's not just Lyngbya. Well, first of all, the name has changed on Lyngbya recently. Microbiologists have been arguing about this. They now refer to it as Microcera. So you might hear it referred to as either one of those things, okay? And I tried to put the old name Lyngbya in parentheses, but Lyngbya is still the name that's in my head. So forgive me for repeating that. We were able to analyze the material microscopically and then asked an outside panel of experts called the Phytoplankton Monitoring Network to look at it, and they confirmed that this is what the stuff is, okay? Go to the next slide, please. But it is not at all that simple. We also took samples of this material and submitted it for genetic analysis to see how many things are in it. Okay, so we pulled up a sample of the stuff from Dick's dock, and it looks like, you know, the hair you like pull out of a shower drain, right? It's just awful. And when we submitted that material for genetic analysis, they came back and said there are about 300 species of microbe in this. So when we ask why this is so resilient, it's not resilient because it's a single tough species, although it is a single tough species. It's resilient because it's an entire ecosystem. Okay, it's microscopic, but it is an entire ecosystem. And I'll bet that if you try to find 300 species of plants in the woods around your house, you're not going to find that many. You won't find an ecosystem in the woods around your house as resilient on the macroscopic scale as this stuff is on the microscopic. The interesting thing about this for us, while we were trying to figure out what exactly is happening here that might be of concern to your health, is that of that 300 species, and I'm only showing you the top 10% or so here in terms of mass, of that 300 or so species, in our top 10%, we have 5, that's the little green arrows, that are known to make toxins that can affect the health of human beings. So while we were trying to sort of unpack this question that Dick gave us of what is this stuff and what is it doing, we had to go through the literature for hundreds of different microbes to try and find what toxins are known to be produced for them so we could even start knowing what to look for.
You often see on television, people bring an unknown sample into, say, a crime lab and say, what is this? And these scientists on television can magically say something like, well, it's a sample of cocaine. It came from Bulgaria. It's 2 weeks old. And that's amazing, right? That's amazing. And then your detectives can go off and do their work. In reality, if somebody brought me back a sample of stuff and they said, I don't know what this is, what is this? Honestly, it would take me probably on the order of a year to unpack the major components of that thing, all right? We can see that in something very simple. At the university, we have to pay money to get waste disposed of, right? If somebody shows up at the waste disposal facility and they have a little bottle of something with no label on it and say, dispose of this for me, minimum cost is $10,000, okay? So if you show up with a pile of gunk that you pulled off the end of your dock and say, what is this? There's a lot of effort involved in trying to answer it. And this just tells you some of the complexity for why. Can we go to the next, please? Okay, so then why is it here? Well, Annie talked about nutrients, right? And there are two really important nutrients for algae and for microbes, and those are nitrogen and phosphorus. When you buy fertilizer at the store, you have the NPK rating on the front, right? It's potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus. We don't worry about potassium very much. It's water soluble. It's not usually a lake issue. Okay, that nutrient goes right through the lake very quickly. Nitrogen we don't worry about for Lingbia because Lingbia can make its own nitrogen. For those of you who have done a lot of farming or gardening, you know that plants like clover or beans, legumes, know the trick for fixing nitrogen out of the air, right? They fertilize themselves. You put them in your yard, make sure your yard greener. Well, Lingbia knows the same trick. In fact, Lingbia is an ancient organism. We have evidence of it in the fossil record going back possibly to before Earth had oxygen in the atmosphere. Probably things like clover learned this trick from Lingbia. All right, Lingbia is good at fixing its own nitrogen. What it can't do is fix its own phosphorus. And that's really important. In the natural world, when we say natural, in the world before humans, when phosphorus moved around, it moved around in dust. Okay, so phosphorus-rich rocks would erode and that dust would blow around, and people have measured how much phosphorus is moving through the atmosphere on dust every day. Since humans have started fertilizing things with phosphorus, okay, the sort of fertilizer we just mentioned you can buy from Lowe's, we've increased the throughput of the phosphorus cycle by about a factor of 8. So we're now pushing about 8 times more phosphorus through the system. So when we ask why do things like Lingbia happen, it's because we're accelerating the feed, okay? Now, when I was little, this was off the air, so I'm dating myself a little bit, but a lot of you have seen the Lucy show, right? There's this famous scene in the Lucille Ball show where Lucy and, what was her friend's name, Ethel, were packing chocolates in the chocolate factory, right? And somebody turned up the rate on the chocolates getting fed through, and then it was just chaos. There wasn't enough boxes left to put them on. They ended up on the floor. Lucy started eating them. Remember this? We have accelerated that conveyor belt for phosphorus the same way. And in the same way for them, there was all sorts of unintended consequences. Lingbia is one of those unintended consequences for us. It could have been something else, right? That's important. You asked about what makes it harmful. What makes a harmful algal bloom harmful is whether or not the algae or bacteria have the genes to make a toxin that affects human beings. It's a very practical definition. You could have an algal bloom that's not harmful. You know, it could have been that you had some Spirogyra bloom in this lake instead, but you got a Lingbia bloom. Okay, we go next. We can measure phosphorus in the water coming into the lake on the north end, and we can measure phosphorus going out on the south end. And when we look at the difference between those, we can tell you how much phosphorus the lake is accumulating over the years. It's a pretty steady rate of accumulation. Okay, when you make that measurement, and you can see a little bit of a spike there on the end, I don't know that that spike is a meaningful change. That spike might affect, reflect unusual weather or something. I don't know. But the slope on that is running somewhere between 150 and 200 tons of phosphorus accumulating per year. okay? That's very important if you're interested in controlling algae, because algae have a way of converting phosphorus into biomass, and it typically takes 1 part phosphorus to about 100 to 150 parts biomass. So that tells you something about the potential for this accumulated phosphorus to really have a disproportionate effect on material growing in the lake. Does that make sense? Okay, can we go one more? Right, how does it get this phosphorus out of the sediment? I mean, it doesn't have roots. It's a cyanobacteria. Now, it's not a plant. It looks like a plant, but it's not a plant. It's a colony. The way it gets it out of the soil or the sediment, we believe, is a process that you see in the literature. It's called microbial lift. In microbial lift, you have these, and you use the phrase benthic. Benthic algae or benthic cyanobacteria are things that are attached to the sediment, right? Like kelp, okay? Think of it like that. But they don't have roots, but they are stuck onto the surface of the sediment. Well, if the sediment is soft and fluffy, like it is in a lot of parts of Lake Wateree, and that algal mass or bacterial mass can grow to the point where it gets to the top of the water, like you often see in these sort of little pillows of it around the edge of the lake. Those are like little buoys, and every time a wave goes by, that buoy gets lifted up, and when the wave passes, it crashes down. Well, those fibers on that soft sediment then lift the sediment and pull it down, lift it and pull it down. So much so that when we've taken this material back into the lab and incinerated it, we find that it is about 35 to 40% sediment by weight. Okay, that's amazing. Think of any other plant you might have seen growing out of the ground. If you brought it home and burned it to see how much soil was left in it, you wouldn't find anything, right? And this material, it's incorporated in the matrix of this mat. Okay, so it's in close contact with that phosphorus. Let's see. All right, with respect to what it's doing, well, I'm a chemist, not a microbiologist. So for me, what it's doing is it's making molecules, because those are the things I look at. All right. So we brought samples home. We ran them through a variety of different instruments. And what we found was it makes a class of toxins that are called in the literature the Lingvia walleye toxins, right? It's a pretty functional name. They're called Lingvia walleye toxins, but what's interesting about them is that structurally, they are very closely related to something called saxitoxin. Saxitoxin is a very bad actor, okay? It's very neurotoxic. Excuse me, it can cause paralysis, it can cause trouble breathing, it can cause memory problems. There's all sorts of issues you can have with that. The Lingvia toxins are closely related to it, but they are not the same thing. And those small changes in structure can have big changes in activity. We don't know what they all are yet. The Lingvia toxins were only discovered about 25 years ago. Okay, and in terms of discovery, that's really not long ago. Saxitoxin was discovered over 100 years ago, and we still don't know all of the modes of action it has in human beings. So saxitoxin derivatives, you know, we're decades out from understanding that. All right, one thing that we have found, actually one of my students, Tristan, wave your hand over there, Tristan, has found that some of these Lingvia toxins decompose in the water under the conditions that we find Lake Wateree, and that's unfortunate because they're, at least one of their decomposition products is much more neurotoxic than the starting materials. So this is unfortunate, this is really bad, but it's not necessarily something that I'm worried about. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. How many of you read mysteries? Okay, there's a Sherlock Holmes mystery that's famous. It involves the stable getting robbed, right? And Sherlock observes at some point during the story that while the stable was getting robbed, the dog wasn't barking. The stable dog wasn't barking. And since the stable dog barked at everybody, that meant there was probably only one person who could have been doing the work, right? That one person had to have been the person who worked at the stable. So they were robbing the place they worked in. In our case, there is also sort of a curious lack of evidence. The chemical that Tristan has found, the chemicals that other students have found, should be leaving a trail of evidence behind around the edge of the lake. We should be seeing dead fish. We should be seeing dead raccoons. We should be seeing dead things or confused things, right? Or things, you know, one of the things Jeff has talked about is fish swimming upside down as a common example of neurotoxicity fish, or swimming backwards. So we don't see those things. And that's really important because you have more than enough mass of Lingbia in the lake that if all of the toxic material that was in it suddenly opened up, right? If somebody took the lid off that bottle and said, go, then you would expect to see something. But we're not. Can we go to the next? So as far as we can tell, we brought live Lingbia into the lab and let it sit in aquaria and beakers and sample the water around it, because we want to answer the same question you do. Is it safe, right? What's it doing to me? The water around live Lingbia seems fine. We have only been able to find one report in the literature from one river in Canada where someone found one of the Lingbia toxins in the water around Lingbia. That's the one report we have of Lingbia toxin getting released into the water. Nobody else seems to be able to find it, and we can't find it either. Unless, okay, and 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever the last time we were here, somebody asked me, can I rake it out of the water and let it dry, put it on my garden? Okay, so unless the Lingbia is pulled out of the water and allowed to air dry, okay, once it dries, then, this is Tristan again, was able to put the dried material back in the water, and when you put it back in the water, the toxin is leached back out. So the dead, dry Lingbia was the source for the toxins. The live material, although it's also a source, the live material, you can think of it as a bottle with the cap on. The dead material, the bottle is broken open. That make sense? Okay, now, something really important to be aware of here is that when we dried these samples, we dried them in the lab, all right? We dried them under very careful conditions in a fume hood. We dried them in a fume hood because in case there was something volatile that might be toxic, we didn't want people exposed to it, right? So it was dried in the lab. I don't have sunlight in my lab, excuse me. So, you know, it was dried under conditions that are pretty controlled conditions. Under those conditions, we found that toxin being released. Can you go to the next one, please? Do you have conditions like that? Well, your conditions have sunlight. You all know the lake goes up and down a lot, all right? The picture of the rock there is actually from pollen season. And it's a big boulder near the Buck Hill Landing. And it marks, those gaps are about 8 inches apart. It marks times the lake was being lowered, and it was being lowered long enough, or each stage was long enough, it was held at a stage long enough that you could see that line of pollen deposition around the rocks, and you probably all see this around stumps in particular when you go around the lake. And then it was lowered a little bit more, so we saw just in the space of time between 2 rainstorms, right? Because the rain would have washed all that stuff away, you get frequent changes in lake level. That means you can be seeing material getting exposed. That's the 2019 lake level figure. The exciting things to look at on that figure are the big spikes, right? Because those are floods, that's wow, right? But in fact, it's not the spikes that you want to look for if you're worried about Lingbia drying out. Go to the next slide. If you're worried about Lingbia drying out, those little crudely drawn circles are where it's drying out. That makes sense? It's the times when it's down. Okay. So, but when it's drying out in open air and open sun. There's stuff around it. It's a complex environment. If there's a place where that toxin can decompose, it's probably more likely to be happening there. So one of the things Tristan has done to continue to study is go out and do what we call transects of some of the exposed Lingbia mats right now, correct? And in those, he started at the lake where the material was still alive and growing and worked his way up the shore through Lingbia patches that were exposed when the water was drawn down up to where it was dead or looked dead. Make sense? And we're processing those samples right now. We don't have the answers for you as to whether or not there is still toxin in those samples. Going on the next. Okay, so can it hurt us? The line on the top is the most important line. Okay, we do record reasons for people to come to emergency rooms in this country. And there is an emergency room data classification for people coming in who are exposed to harmful algal blooms. They don't use it much in South Carolina. They use it a lot in Florida. Okay, if any of you have been to Sarasota when there's a red tide, and you've seen people go, especially if somebody has asthma, there's a lot of emergency room admits from the brevetoxin in the air from the red tide. And so that's a recognized thing, right? Not every emergency room is trained to look for it, but we have those codes, and there has not yet been one associated with Lingbia. So that should make you feel better. Okay, it makes me feel better. But, always a but, right? So, Jeff and Margaret are going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. I don't feel like we're really prepared to answer that question for you. And for one thing, I'm a chemist, I'm not a toxicologist. They're going to be talking to you about their toxicology endpoints, and they'll see what they can do in terms of extrapolating that. Okay, Jeff is not. So on next. Okay, the last question that we had from Dick is, can we make it go away? Making it go away is a lot harder than you would think. I already said, this organism has been around on this earth for a long, long time. All right? And it has dealt with conditions successfully that are much more unpleasant than anything you could do to it. And it's still here. So I think it's going to be with us for a while. The question is, look at that other 300 group of 300 microorganisms that are growing there with it. Some of those might be perfectly benign. Some of those might be almost nice to have around, compared to Lingbia at least. The question is, can we do something to change the dynamics in the lake to maybe let those grow where the Lingbia was? That would be nice. We don't know yet, and we probably will need microbial ecologists to help us with that. There are other questions about whether or not chemicals could be applied either to control the phosphorus in the sediment or to kill the Lingbia. Now, you all know that that's a DNR and a DHEC decision, right? That's not a UofSC decision. We can look at some things. We have taken Lingbia in the lab and exposed it to algicides. It shouldn't be a shock. It's very hard to kill. Okay, it's very hard to kill if you keep the algicide in the labeled use. So you never want to go outside the labeled use, because if you go outside the labeled use, that's when other things start to die too. Plus, I hate to put it this way, but it's not really any of our lake to mess with. This lake is a water of the state, right? You've all agreed with Duke about certain things you're going to do with it. It's for the state and Duke to work out together what strategy they want. They certainly can take input from any of us. That would be great. But ultimately, it's not our decision for how to do it. We will let you know if we find a chemical that decomposes the toxin in the biomass after it's pulled out. We don't know yet. Those are just experiments we're starting. Go to the next. We do know, we're quite confident that it's phosphorus in the sediment that's driving all this. And we know that the lake is going to be dried or pulled down soon. One of the things that you may recall from the dam project on Lake Murray was a lot of homeowners suddenly found themselves with these big new expanses of lawn outside their house that used to be lake, right? All the time the water was down, they had all this open. Some of those homeowners maintained that area and some of them just let it grow. If you let plants with roots grow in what is normally lake bed, those roots will dig down, they will find the phosphorus they need, they'll bring it back up and they'll convert it into leaves and sticks and things like that. When they die, when the lake refills, they'll fall over. All of the sediment that was safely buried before, where the phosphorus, or all the phosphorus that was buried before that was taken up by their roots, will now be laying on top of the sediment, where any microbes can get to it. So if you have the water down for a long time and you see things growing around the edges, I recommend you consider cutting those things and moving that biomass up well above the old water line. Okay, in preparation for the lake refilling. And in fact, if you do that, you'll be remediating some of the phosphorus in your sediment. I'm not saying go out and seed it or anything like that. Things will come up on their own. But it is something to be mindful of when the lake is down. Okay, next. All right. After that, it took an enormous amount of people to generate what must seem like a very short presentation. It's because this challenge of what is this stuff is a really profound challenge. And I really have to express a lot of admiration for all the people who worked on it, and especially for Water Watch. If they hadn't called our attention to it to begin with and been working with us all this time, we would not have been able to come up with any of these numbers for it. All right, so I'm good. Is there questions? I can take some.
No, there was one question, but you answered it already.
Okay.
Back of the road here.
You said about stuff that grows when it, I thought I heard you say cut it versus the difference between cutting it versus pulling it out by the root.
I have literally no idea. The more biomass you can get out, the better off it seems like you are. But I'm sure there is a trade-off in that you're going to end up exposing what had been buried soil when you uproot it. So I don't know the answer to that, sorry. There are people out there who are professional lake managers who try to keep the ecology in lakes running in a certain way. And you might want to consult with one of them and ask that question. They'll have a better answer.
Dr. Ferry, you started talking about the fact of when water goes down for a substantial period of time, this stuff dies. And then when the water comes back up, it can it sounded almost like rehydrated or release of the toxins. And I'm not sure whether this is best for you or for Dr. Scott, which one's the right person. But with us going to go into that dam modification project and them taking the water down a lot further than what they, well, not a lot further, but further down than what they normally do, but for a much longer length of time. What can we do to anticipate what's going to happen with that and maybe try to do some things to be in front of it instead of reactive to on the other side of it? I mean, you're saying that when it dies, if the water goes back up over it, there could be that release of toxins, which could kill fish, could do all these other kinds of things. Well, we're going to have that down for 14 to 16 months. And as Duke talked about, it may go up and go down and stuff, but for extended periods of time, especially in the summertime, when we usually see a lot more growth and stuff than what we do in the wintertime with this, because of the water temperatures and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the short answer is at the moment the drying experiments we've done in the lab.
Right.
We're still waiting on the data for what happens when it dries in the field. And so I don't have a good answer for you for how that lab work will extrapolate cleanly into the field. The fact that Duke draws the water down in the winter, okay, and that leaves some of those patches exposed. And we don't hear calls, again, from ERs, and we don't hear calls of fish kills. That should be reassuring, okay? But what is happening to it after that, I don't know. I don't know. All you can do is look at what's happened before and look at that as a guide. One of the things that makes answering this question tricky is that the genes that allow Limbia to make the toxins that it makes aren't always turned on. So the same kind of Limbia is growing in Crystal River, Florida right now as is growing in Lake Wateree. Crystal River has a volunteer program that Duke used to operate, and they've stopped because they've become aware of the toxin issues, that they used to run, where volunteers would go swimming, pull out the Limbia in their hands and carry it out over their shoulders, okay? Their Limbia, we've sampled their Limbia, We know their Lingbia has the gene for the toxin production. That's been published by other researchers. We can't find the toxin in their Lingbia. It doesn't seem to be making it. We don't know why. There are lakes in North Carolina that have Lingbia issues when I've talked to water handler or people who manage those environments. And they'll tell me they don't even want to reach in that stuff without a glove on because it causes skin rashes. Okay, well, the toxins we're finding don't cause skin rashes. Okay, so we don't know what activates the Lingbia to produce this stuff. Okay, think about if you saw a skunk, but you'd never seen one before. So you had no idea what it was. And while you're trying to experiment to see what it is, you give it something to eat and it's just fine. Then the next step is you poke it with a stick and everything goes downhill in a horrible way. So Lingbia is a lot like that. There's a lot, we don't know what poking it looks like yet. We know what feeding it looks like, but we don't know what poking it.
Let's just don't poke it.
Sorry. Oh, I knew that would happen.
Yeah, that happens when you poke.
Yeah. All right, what do you got?
Have you, in any of your testing done, or tested any different types of soils where you believe the sediment might be contributing to the increased phosphorus, or?
We have sampled the sediments and looked for phosphorus in the sediments. We have not gone to the point of trying to characterize the soil, the nature of the soil. So, you know, if you're talking about like, is it a karst or is it a kaolinite or something like that? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
Just pick up the microphone if you want to move.
What was the source of the phosphorus that was in the lake? Honestly, Charlotte only started phosphorus control about 20 years ago. So the bulk of, my guess is the bulk of what you're going to find in the lake was probably from, Charlotte from a few decades back.
Okay, so with the testing that's going on now, most of the testing is happening through tributaries. You haven't noticed one specific tributary has an increase?
We have not noticed that, no. Annie might see that when she gets her program up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, would you say it's unprecedented that the stuff has been dry for 16 months? Do you think that might kill it where it doesn't have enough time to revive when it gets re-wetted?
It's not unprecedented because I think people don't realize how few natural lakes there are around here. Okay, a natural lake is a natural hole in the ground where water collects. South Carolina probably has, we did the math the other day, Jeff. Well, it has at least 2,000 lakes that were built by humans that DHEC regulates. In addition to that, there's probably about another 60,000 that are stormwater retention ponds also built by people. North Carolina is the same way, not a lot of natural lakes. So these managed lakes often do drawdowns for control of algae. And so we've seen that in the literature before. And when you look in the lake manager literature, it turns out a lot of those people don't do molecular analyses at the same time because it's hard to do. And so they haven't tracked the toxins in the lakes where things have been drawn down. They do often report that during drawdowns or as a consequence of drawdowns, lake water quality can degrade, okay? Especially during the refill. But there isn't a good trail in the literature for a molecular reason, if that makes sense. And that's the only kind of reason I know how to look at. If that answers.
There's no empirical data showing that the stuff dies completely for an extended period of time.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Yep.
Cyanobacteria like Lingbia make a kind of cell called, if I remember correctly, Jeff, you might have to correct me, an aconite. And an aconite is like a time capsule. So that if the main biomass of the mat dies, these little time capsules can still open up again in the future. So maybe it probably better to think of it as seed. We don't know how long they can last for Lyngbia. For Microcystis, which is the organism that closed the drinking water treatment plant in Toledo, Ohio about 5 years ago, there's evidence that those can last for about 80 years.
Wow.
So,
The answer no. Okay. There's a question in the chat. It's regarding the if there's patches of algae or this Olympia out there. Is it safe still to swim or no?
It doesn't seem to come out of the live Olympia very well.
Okay.
So, you know, the people in North Carolina are reporting to us skin rashes, but they don't know why. We don't know why either. You know, it could be the same. It could be a real thing, or it could be like what you feel if you find a spider in your hair. You're peeling someone for the next 10 minutes. I don't know.
I hope you have a health. Thank you. Any other questions?
It sounds like we're kind of have almost the conditions of a little bit of a perfect storm heading our way. Draw down, increase flows, maybe additional sediment, additional conditions that would lead to shallow water with more needed to grow, and then some dying. Has anybody got a plan, you know, to this drawdown or actually thinking about?
That's not my area.
I guess,
Yeah. I haven't seen anything. So you can look this is actually important. If you've never looked at these things, raise your hands for me if you've seen this. Do my professor thing. Raise your hands if you have seen DNR's aquatic plant management plans. How many? Seriously. You see, okay, people who are not on Water Watch from UofSC. Or I guess you're a river keeper, right? Okay, so did you know that DNR makes aquatic plant management plans for all of the lakes in the state? Okay, there is a plan for how to manage aquatic plants in Lake Wateree. To my knowledge, Jeff, do you remember this? They haven't requested funding for it since Hydro.
I believe that's correct.
Is that correct?
And
You're talking about the plant?
these plans,
Yeah.
of course, have to adapt to changing environmental conditions. So I think, you know, the information we're providing, this might be very useful. The reason we want to provide it to you is we feel you should know what we know. And that, you know, if you feel you need to take that to those people for further discussion, we certainly would be glad to help you as we can with the discussion with the information we have.
So I will. But if you just go to Google and type in aquatic plant, or maybe it's invasive aquatic plant management plan, DNR South Carolina, boom, they will come up. You might have to dig around a little to find the most recent year, but they exist.
Aquatic plants will eat some of the nutrients that causes that the algae feed on.
All of the plants in the lake compete for the same pool of nutrients. That's right. Okay, I should say of available nutrients. And some plants can make other ones available that some can't.
And isn't there other types of certain bacteria too that are good bacteria that also eat the nutrients that could deplete the?
Maybe is the short answer.
I mean, isn't that common in pond management for people who own private ponds or? I'm
not aware of anybody trying to manipulate their microbial populations to that level. Doesn't mean they don't, I'm just unaware. All right, Maggie.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm taking so long here.
John, I'm just glad you didn't give me a shower, so. Thank you. It's a real privilege and honor to be here today. I'm Dr. Jeff Scott. This is Maggie Carson, one of my doctoral students who will be presenting the bulk of our information to you in our presentation. I wanted to make a couple of real quick opening comments, and I'm going to turn it to Maggie. We are one of 4 national centers on oceans. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Because I'll take this off if you can. We're one of 4 national centers for oceans and human health. What percentage of harmful algal blooms occur in fresh water? 97.5%. So that is the bulk of what the Oceans and Human Health Program looks at. So it sounds like a marine program, but one of the centers is the Great Lakes Center, where they have massive blooms in Lake Erie and all other reservoirs up in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Minnesota. So a bulk of the work on HABs, even though it says oceans, all rivers lead to the sea. So eventually we're seeing these freshwater HABs now invade estuaries with floods. And that creates whole new issues for seafood safety. So I want you to know, along with Woods Hole, Oceanographic, the Great Lakes Center, and the Greater Caribbean Center, we're focused on these issues. And I'm really glad to announce we heard Thursday, our program that we compete to be one of those 4 centers will be refunded for another 5 years, and we will be going in for a recompete. So we've got some steep competition. We nudged out Scripps and Washington, University of Washington. So we'll be competing, but it is a national competition. We got a great center. We're doing great work, and you're hearing about some of it. And the biggest thing, we have a huge focus on community engagement. That's why we've been with you in every meeting the last 5 years. I want to also make a couple of quick comments about Water Watch. Without Water Watch, you would be in real trouble trying to address the issues you have in this lake. And I want to tell you the commitment you have from USC. The boat Annie showed on her first slide, that's the new USC boat that the Dean of the School of Public Health donated and is stored right up at Wes's shop. And that is one of the boats Randy can count on that whenever we need to sample. And that crew you saw yesterday, those were 3 graduate students in that boat, all out doing their work, helping y'all. The other thing I wanted to also say, Milt Marley, where's Milt? Yeah, Milt, great job on the cleanups. One of the areas we focus on, and I just want to mention this real briefly, are microplastics. If we don't clean that trash up, it forms these little microparticles. And do you know if you eat an oyster in South Carolina, you're ingesting 15 microplastic particles every time you put one in your mouth? And that's not good. Because guess what grows on those plastics? Vibrio bacteria that can make you sick. So that's some of the other type of work our center does. So let's get that trash out of the river so we don't make those microplastics. And we have done a survey with the waterkeeper of levels here in the water here at Lake Wateree. And one of our students, Emma DeLockery, just finished a documentary from microplastics from the Midlands to the coast, because all rivers run to the sea, yet the sea is not full, as the prophet says in Ecclesiastes. So that film, by the way, won the Hootie and the Blowfish Foundation Community Service Award. We're real proud of that. And it was shown on ETV December the 19th. It'll be rebroadcast. So I really hope you'll watch it. Now today, we're gonna talk a little bit in Maggie's presentation. Oh, one last thing. John Ferry showed you that loading of phosphorus over time. And I mentioned things constantly change. In 2008, the population of Charlotte was 580,000 people. Today, it's 970,000 people. Now that 500,000 new people all apply fertilizers on their lawns, and 78% of the phosphorus runs off right into the watershed. And so things change. And when I spoke to you 5 years ago, I talked about how this area south of Charlotte's the fastest growing population area except along the coast. And so because of that, there's more, as John said, there's much more phosphorus in the water than we've had in the past. So today we're going to talk about something that we tried to do to address the potential. When John and Tristan measured the toxins in the dried algae, I said, John, we have to address this. We were planning on doing this. So if I could get the slides up. We're going to go back and take a look at our dear friend. He's going to get an Academy Award at the end of the day. Okay, so the question is asked when it hurts. And that's what Maggie Carson has tried to do. So Maggie, I'm going to turn it over to you. And Maggie is going to give you a presentation that's part of her dissertation. So Maggie?
Hello, everybody. My name is Maggie Carson, and like Dr. Scott said, I'm a PhD student at the University of South Carolina in the Arnold School of Public Health in the Department of Environmental Health Sciences. So I work collaboratively with Dr. Ferry's lab and concurrently. So we do very similar work, but I look at it from a public health lens because I am not a chemist. I am a public health professional and an environmental health scientist with a mix in of toxicology. So you can move to the next slide. And so I'm looking at Lake Wateree and harmful algae and the toxicity in a fish model. And these are just some pictures of me out in the field doing my work. And so a little bit about what I do. So we were looking at the Lingbia walleye, and like they have explained it very well, Dr. Bourbonnais and Dr. Ferry. I wanted to see what the Lingbia interactions with fathead minnows. And so that's a species that's used in aquatic toxicology. And it's in the lake. People use that to go fishing. And so I looked into my research before I started, and there's limited prior research with Lingbia walleye and fathead minnows. And so I thought that was something really interesting to look into. And so we worked to develop methods to assess the Lingbia and the fathead minnows and the toxins with Dr. Ferry's lab. And then something that takes a while with animal research, when you do toxicology studies with vertebrates, it requires institutional animal care and use committee, IACUC approval. And so we had to develop and write these protocols to use the animals with care. And so that took a little bit of time. And I know we've been working on this for several years, but that is part of the reason that it's taking a while to understand what's happening in the lake. And so my goal was to determine the effects of Lingbia walleye toxins on the mortality of the adult fathead minnow. And so this is just a overall view of what I did for my work brief in like a 30,000 foot level. So I use the species fathead minnows. They're these little guys. If you're not a fisherman, they're about, my fish were about 5 centimeters to 7 centimeters. Not full picture, if you've never seen one. I did both in situ field toxicity tests and lab toxicity tests. And so in the field, I used Dick and Pearl's dock, which is our living laboratory here on Lake Wateree. And Randy's dock as my control site because he doesn't have any algae in his area. But I put minnow traps with 10 minnows in each, submerged underwater in the algal bloom to see if the fish would die within a 96-hour period. And so that was my in-field work. Then for my lab work, I came to Dick's dock again and I took some of that algae away. He told me I could take more, but I told him I didn't. But I sampled the algae in August, September, and October, and I took those samples back to the lab. So both three types of algae. So I looked at the live algae, air dried algae, which like Dr. Ferry's lab, I use their method. I put that in the fume hood in our lab and I let that dry through that process. And then I also freeze dried it in a freeze dryer in another lab. And I looked at these differences in the algae and how that impacted mortality with different amounts. And so the next slide. So the overall results, what happened? So did the fish die? So when I looked at the live Lingbia with the fish in the lake, no, none of my fish died in the minnow traps over all of my experiments. So the next thing, the live Lingbia in the lab, the minnows in the beakers with the live Lingbia, the different concentrations, none of my fish died in those experiments either. Now when we move to the freeze-dried algae, which is when, like we discussed, Dr. Ferry discussed, the cells, when the algae dries, the cells are lysed or they open up to be able to release the toxin if the toxin is there. And yes, my minnows did die in those experiments. Now, depending on the concentration, but they did die. And then with the air dried algae, which also the cells are lysed, because the algae is dried, yes, I did have mortality in those experiments. And so what does that mean for homeowners and lake users? Next slide. So this is some of the important information that I would like to give you. Just a reminder that this is research is a work in progress and it does take time. I know that we think that things can happen overnight, but even just one of my experiments can take months to collect the algae and dry it and get the minnows and do all these things. So it does take time. But the Lingbia walleye in Lake Wateree has been found to have the potential to produce toxins. So it doesn't mean that it will release the toxins at all times, but it does have the potential to produce them. But the good news is, like I showed in the last diagram, the live Lingbia was not toxic to fish in the field or the lab. The cautionary news is when the Lingbia is exposed to air or dried out, the cells are lysed or opened, and the toxins could be released. And so under the conditions in my experiments, the fish toxicity was observed experimentally in the lab. However, fish and humans are not the same, so that's important to remember. But my message to y'all is that care should be exercised at all times when around the algal material, and to err on the side of caution no matter the state of the algae, so whether it's dried or live, I would avoid all interactions if possible. We all know the live algae stinks, it looks gross, it feels gross, I wouldn't go in there. And we have heard reports of skin rashes and possible other effects, but no one has really conducted a full documentation of the extent of the potential illnesses in humans here at Lake Wateree. Next slide. So, like everyone's mentioned, I am doing some lake resident interview study. So I'm looking for residents of Lake Wateree to sign up. So if you're interested or this talk has compelled you, please come visit me in the corner, or if you're online, let me know. But it's a short interview and a brief follow-up survey. You'll be getting a gift card for your participation to Amazon. And it is to help you all and my research, but my goal is to listen to residents. I want to learn more about the health implications of harmful algal blooms and Lingbia walleye. And I want to identify the best methods for lake and water quality communication. And I'm going to give that information back to the Lake Wateree Association, possibly collaborate with the Catawba Riverkeeper, hopefully with Duke Energy. But I want to use this information to help the lake. So help me help you.
All right.
So if you'd like to sign up with me, please let me know. And then next slide. Just thank you to everyone who helps me with my work. My citizen scientists that are here today. I appreciate you letting me come to your properties and utilize your docks and your algae and your water, and my other collaborators with my project. And next slide. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you.
So is it safe to assume that, like, when we have high water events and we have like, old timbers or wood that washes up on our shore and we let it dry out and then we burn it, that we could be breathing in toxins from?
I don't think the lingua grows off the wood.
I can't understand what you're saying.
I'm sorry. I don't believe the lingua, I have not observed it growing off wood. Now, if it is, then I guess there would be that potential. But let me make a couple of quick comments generally about Maggie's data and trying to answer your question. One of the things that in the lab we showed in closed beakers with no dilution, this material can be toxic. We have to start with that understanding. Now, Maggie has just finished that data, and so the next step will then be to take that and see how much dilution it takes to remove that toxicity. So trying to get some earlier questions about what do we do during drawdown with dried algae, we will be able to answer that question. Now, I really think if you had been burning wood along your lakefront and I think people have, I would just avoid the smoke, not because of the algae, but primarily because we're learning now 9 million people a year die from combustion products when we burn things. It's called third-hand smoke. And so that causes chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and that would be probably a much greater hazard, I would believe, than anything that you would get from incinerating it with the algae. Chances are the heat would probably destroy a lot of the toxin, I would believe. The other thing Dr. Ferry mentioned, we do not know the effects of ultraviolet light. All of our experiments were done in the lab under fluorescent light. Now, let me tell you why I think this is real important. When I was at NOAA, we were dealing with massive fish kills in North Carolina with a toxic algae called Listeria. Don't know if any of you have heard of that. There was a big debate, is there a toxin or isn't there a toxin? And labs, some of the NOAA labs were saying there wasn't, our lab said there was. And what we discovered was the reason the labs weren't measuring it is because the lights in the lab actually caused the death. Now, in the case here, the ultraviolet light, in most cases with Listeria, the toxin was destroyed in a matter of seconds. So we don't know what the situation is with the lingua toxin. But that's why Dr. Ferry and Tristan are looking now at the algae survey to find out when we leave it out under ultraviolet light here in the field, do we still see toxin loss? So we've got more work to do, but we felt we should be letting you guys know what we know. We're open and transparent, and we may sometimes give you a little too much information, but I'd rather err, just like those extra life jackets, rather than not tell you enough information. Yes, sir, you have.
Now, as far as the toxicity, you say you should avoid touching it because you can get rashes. What about the toxicity as far as ingestion? I mean, we're not going to drink the lake water, but as far as pets drinking lake water where the algae blooms are, can that be dangerous to pets?
Well, this is a personal opinion on this and not a scientific.
Mike.
I'm sorry. This is a personal opinion, not a scientific opinion. But I would be very careful allowing dogs around any lake today to be drinking, because not only is there lingua that we can see, we have seen possibly formidian in the lake, which we reported last year. And you may remember that was the toxin in Texas that killed a lot of dogs. So we've only seen a limited area of that here. But bottom line is, I would be very careful in letting my dog get out in the lake any more than you have to.
What about human absorption? You know, touching it?
Well, obviously, we do not have any reports of, as Dr. Ferry said, of anyone going to an emergency room.
Other than rashes?
Right now, we don't have good documentation. That's why Maggie is trying to do what she is doing, so we can actually have quantitative information and not ad hoc reports, because we have to be scientific about this. I also want to make a point about fish kills real quick. Now, if I know a little bit about something, it's fish kills. I spent most of my life studying fish kills here in South Carolina. From 1976 to 1992, half of your fish kills in this state were caused by pesticides. In surface waters, we were 10 times the national average for fish kills for pesticides. So that's why I know a little bit about neurotoxicity of things that are neurotoxic. From 1990, though, after we started retention ponds to control runoff, we are now down to 3% fish kills from pesticides. But 83% of the fish kills occur in stormwater retention ponds. Not lakes, stormwater retention ponds that trap nitrogen and phosphorus intentionally. They're control structures. They're not, well, they are, they're technically not waters of the state, but from 1990 to 2008, 83% of your fish kills were in retention ponds. And many of those were associated with harmful algal blooms. Can't say definitively they were caused, but there were blooms at the time the fish kills were reported. So we have not had reports of fish kills here on the lake that I'm aware of. And that is very encouraging. And that's why I said I think the news on the live Lingbia is really good news. And once we're able to take Maggie's data and distill it down to dilution factors, I think we can come back and let y'all know exactly how much buffering, because this is a big lake. It's a lot of water out there. And usually any dilution of 10 to 1 to 100 to 1, you know, that's a 1 liter beaker. That's a fourth of a gallon. That's not much water. So when you dilute that down, you got great dilution potential here. So we want to be cautionary and tell you about it, but on the other hand, we will try to get back and put that in a better context once Maggie analyzes all of her data.
Okay.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that I, as someone living on the lake, can do or not do to improve the health of our lake?
Dr. Ferry already told you, try to control your nutrients, your fertilizing up in your yards. My grandfather, he ran a 1,000-acre farm in Upper Kershaw County on Lynch's River. And he used to always tell, my father worked for Hooker's Pedigree Seed, and my father always used to get him to use more fertilizer. He said, Scotty, all my neighbors use fertilizers and I don't need them. He was a lot smarter than a lot of people realize, but he didn't use a lot of pesticides because it killed the boll weevils around his cotton, the farmers around him. And so I would just encourage you to have a nice lawn, but not a manicured lawn. That would be probably the one thing I could encourage you to do.
Well, there's certain fertilizers that are to avoid or use.
Yeah, you would have to talk to Clemson, but they have great websites. They've got a whole bunch of information on their websites. You go, and if you can't find it, let me know, and I can put you in touch with somebody who can give you some more advice. Your county agent's the best person, usually.
My question kind of feeds into what she was saying. The phosphates in cleaning products and other household things we use also contribute to the phosphorus in the lake because everybody's got a set machine.
Certainly, if you can use green products, my son's a contractor and we use this Green Clean, I think it's called, that is non-phosphate and it works. I was just cleaning a deck last weekend with it and it works great. And I would encourage you to just look for those non-phosphate detergents as much as possible.
Some of my neighbors, when the lake is down, they will go out and algae collects along the shoreline, and they will scoop it up, get rid of it. Is that okay? Is that recommended? I mean, they get rid of it, they take it somewhere else.
Well, I don't know where they're taking it.
Probably not near water.
I think Dr. Ferry's comments and Maggie's instructions were real instructive. I would not contact it any more than you have to. We know that as long as it's alive and healthy, we're not seeing it in the water. We're not seeing it affecting living beings like you and I. You just don't want to touch it. And I would try as much as you can. Unfortunately, with COVID, John and I were actually going to have somebody rake out, a student in the summer, rake out some algae at Dick's house, I think, and we were going to put it in a compost bed and try to follow it. We just haven't been able to do that. But those are good questions. Right now, the best advice I can give you is try to make your contact as indirect as possible.
And as a researcher, I don't ever interact with the Lingua without wearing my PPE, my gloves, those kinds of things. But I touch it because I research about it. I wouldn't just do it for fun.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. Let's have a big round of applause for all the people from South Carolina. As you can see, they do a tremendous amount of work to benefit us all. Thank you all. We're a little behind, so we're going to have to speed this up just a hair. We do have another guest that I'd like to have speak briefly. John Serby from Catawba River Keepers is here. He's the executive director, and they do a tremendous amount for us, and I'd love to have him just say a few words.
1 minute. Thank you to Water Watch. Thank you for the support from Lake Wateree Association. Catawba River Keeper is a 7,000 member strong organization today because of the support of local groups coming together, helping us have a full basin view. We operate 26 counties in North and South Carolina, including all of Lake Wateree and the entire Wateree River to the confluence of the Congaree. One thing that I want to make sure that you guys know is, a lot of you know Dr. Jim Welsh and his wife Sherry. Dr. Welsh is on our board. He is the Lake Wateree representative on our board of directors. We have representatives from throughout the basin. So if you have a specific concern that you want Catawba River Keeper to dig into, those of you who know us know that we are sometimes the action side of the things that are coming out of UofSC and other studies. And we have the tools and the levers to pull to get change made. If we don't have the tools, we will find partners to help us get those tools. So that's our role. If you have concerns that you want us to address, please don't hesitate to reach out. You all have my information, but if you need to get to us through Dr. Welsh, feel free to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. There. Okay, just a couple of closing comments. Again, I'd like to call out for everybody to try and find a member. You know, if we get everybody out here to try and find one new member, it'll greatly bolster our membership, and with that, we can continue to fund all the projects that you've heard about today. And we want to do that. We want to continue to fund all of these very worthwhile projects. So if everybody could try and find a member, I think that would be great for us moving forward. In addition, behind me, we have these island signs. These signs are located on all the islands around the lake, and many of you may know or have seen that some of them have fallen in disrepair. So Duke, if I understand correctly, has paid for these replacement signs. We are going to have a call to action shortly, and we're going to try and put together some work committees So don't need to have a boat, just need to have some desire to come out and help. And we'll probably be picking people up at landings and bringing them out and doing some work to try and stand all these signs back up and make sure that we have a safe environment. So as you know, if you're out on the river or the lake and you see one of these signs and somebody's in trouble, these signs help you identify exactly where you are. And if you need emergency services or something to that effect, you can use these signs to help direct the people to where you need those services. We are about an hour behind. I really just want to express my appreciation to everybody, all the hard work that everybody's done for decades to make this program possible. Can't even begin to say how grateful I am living here and playing on this lake and so forth. So let's continue to do the good work that we've been doing. All of those people that have been participating and supporting this organization, you know, again, thank you. And for all of those people that may have not participated, there's lots of opportunity, right? We've got some new people, I think, that are going to be joining us on the board. I'm not going to go through that at this point because we're a little behind, but certainly want everybody to look at opportunities to participate in some of these work days and other committees that we're going to bring forth shortly. There'll be more communications, so keep an eye out for those. And again, thank you so much for all your ongoing support and your help keeping this a wonderful, beautiful place for us to live and play. And with that, I'm going to call for an adjournment.
Shorts, get shorts.
Oh yeah, please, before you leave, if you wouldn't mind just grabbing some of these shirts. That's right, take the shirts and pass them out to people. People that maybe don't know about the organization, pass the shirts out and let them know about it. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate your time on this Saturday.
Thank you.